Chapter 1. The defeated Orc Kingdom sent 2 beast slaves as a peace offering. My stepsister claimed the majestic white tiger with striking eyes, leaving me face to face with the dying Merman. In my past life, out of compassion I took the Merman as my personal guard and nurtured him diligently, spending fortunes to heal his wounds and even trading 10 cities to buy his freedom. He in turn protected me devotedly, remaining by my side day and night. I truly believed our love was mutual. I rejected dozens of marriage proposals and endured the world's scorn just to stay by his side, but when the beast tribes attacked again and threw both me and my half-sister into the raging river, I desperately begged the Merman to save me, only to be brutally swatted underwater by his massive tail, forced to watch as he carried my sister away. In that moment, I finally understood. He only submitted to me back then to survive. The truth was, even after regaining his freedom, his lingering loyalty wasn't for me. He just wanted another glimpse of her. I struggled in the filthy river water, choking to death as my lungs filled with silt. When I opened my eyes again, I was back on the day we selected beast slaves, watching the dying mermaid. I pinched my nose and mocked, "Where'd this rotting fish come from? Reeks to high heaven." The moment my words faded, an absurd silence fell upon us, and the beautiful mermaid's cheeks flushed with embarrassed crimson. My stepsister Ori clearly hadn't expected such hostility toward the mermaid, her eyes widening in shock. "Sister, can't you see this mermaid is gravely injured? Instead of helping, you choose to slander them. I know you're jealous that the white tiger chose me first, but must you take it out on this innocent little merfolk? I never thought you could be so heartless." Ori's delicate face scrunched up, her eyes brimming with pity for the wounded mermaid. The Emperor suppressed his rage, his eyes brimming with disappointment. To think he'd proved so unfit for responsibility, a princess squabbling with her half-sister over trifles. "Are you determined to shame me?" the maids whispered among themselves, their expressions dripping with scorn toward me, yet I remained composed, watching as the usually aloof Merman weakly lifted his head to nuzzle Ori's palm. I couldn't help but sneer at my own stupidity. How could I have never realized the one he truly longed for was always my half-sister Ori? In my past life, I naively thought myself kind-hearted when I adopted the Merman Dylan, keeping him by my side to groom him meticulously, to cure his poison wounds. I spared no expense hiring the beastfolk's finest physician to perform the excruciating bone-scraping treatment, fearing Dylan might have lingering attachments. I gambled my last 10 cities to obtain that flimsy deed of servitude, all just to grant him freedom, fearing courtiers might scorn Dylan for his orc heritage. I knelt before the Emperor for 7 days and nights begging for his promotion. I believed our love was mutual, so I gave Dylan my whole heart without reservation. When the orc tribes attacked again, my half-sister Ori and I were both pushed into the raging river. Through tears I begged Dylan to save me, only to watch him dive in and scoop Ori into his arms. My heart was numb with despair, yet the will to live made me cling desperately to Dylan's tail. Clutching at my last shred of hope, I spoke up. "Why won't you save me? I'm supposed to be your master." Dylan finally seemed to notice me, his icy gaze sweeping over me like a killing frost, each word a dagger to the heart. "I had no choice but to serve as your slave. Only Ori truly understood me. Had you not insisted on taking me away, I wouldn't have wasted years pining for you while enduring the agony of watching Ori shower affection on another beastfolk. You're surrounded by sycophants, countless people eager to lend you a hand. You'll never lack for rescuers, with or without me. But Ori's different. As an illegitimate daughter, she endured nothing but scorn with no one to rely on. Now, I'm all she has." The icy river water seeped into my very bones as I struggled to comprehend what I'd just heard. Yet Dylan's eyes showed no hesitation, watching me about to be swallowed by the river. He merely clenched his jaw in irritation before brutally slamming me back toward the riverbed with his massive tail. Long drained of strength to struggle, I could only suffer as silt flooded my lungs, choking to death in agony. Now reborn, that bone-deep, festering pain still lingers in my heart, refusing to fade. Seeing Dylan again now, there's heartache, but far more hatred. I wanted nothing more to do with him. Raising my brows with a faint smile, "Since my dear sister cares so much for the Merman, why not take him back to the palace with you?" The moment I spoke, Dylan wagged his tail excitedly, but the next instant, Ori frantically waved his hands in refusal. "How could that be? If word gets out, people will accuse me of bullying you again. Are you deliberately making things difficult for me, even if you despise me? This is no way to frame me." My royal parents watched me with suspicion from the sidelines, poised to reprimand me for mistreating Ori at any moment. I knew Ori never lifted a finger without personal gain. The treatment costs for the Merman's numerous wounds would surely bankrupt a minor noble like her. Even if she wished to take Dylan in, she lacked the means to sustain him. Narrowing my eyes, I chuckled. "I genuinely have your sister's best interests at heart." You probably don't realize this mermaid possesses abilities no other beastfolk have. If you nourish it with blood for 999 days, it can grant you any wish, even if you desired a star from the heavens. This all-powerful mermaid could pluck one for you. I'm offering it to you only because your sister's coming-of-age ceremony is in less than 10 days. I want to gift it to her. Ori's face lit up with joy as she eagerly embraced Dylan. But the mermaid that had been hoping to be taken by Ori began thrashing violently in protest. I immediately rushed to cover Dylan's mouth, ignoring his shocked expression, and spoke in a stern voice, "Guards, take this mermaid to Ori's palace at once." The more Dylan struggled, the more my heart ached. To make a mermaid grant wishes, one must feed on its heart's blood for 999 days. He cherished Ori too much to let her take such risks for him. In my past life, I endured the agony of extracting heart's blood for 999 days, believing Dylan would finally grant my wish. Just as I begged him to resurrect my birth mother who died a decade ago, Ori caught a chill and threw a tantrum for lotus pastries. All my 999 days of sacrifice became worthless. Dylan ignored my pleas and used his divine favor to get Ori a steaming bag of those damned pastries. When I demanded an explanation in rage, he coldly turned the blame on me. "You'll never understand the struggles of a concubine's daughter like Ori, only I know how hard it is for such a delicate woman to survive in this treacherous palace. How could you be so cruel? She's your own sister, yet you deny her even a simple lotus pastry. The memory still numbs me with heartache. Now that I've been reborn, I'll see if Ori makes her wishes so carelessly this time." Watching Dylan being dragged away finally let me return to my chambers in peace. I thought seeing Dylan again would be unlikely, yet that very night, the usually aloof creature unexpectedly slipped into my room. He lay cold-faced on my bed, his tail's crimson blood soaking through the entire quilt. Seeing his crisscrossed wounds, I instinctively reached out, but before my fingers could touch the injuries, Dylan shoved me away with a vicious glare. "Don't touch me." His frosty eyes brimmed with disdain as he lifted his chin arrogantly, carrying himself like the master of this chamber. I need treatment. Hand me the medicine. I'll repay you tenfold someday." Seeing Dylan's sunder act confirmed what I already knew. We'd both been reborn. He spoke to me with such spoiled arrogance, still convinced of my undying devotion. "Not a word about seeing me today. Ori's just playful, never meant me harm. Spread rumors and you'll regret it." A sharp crack cut him off mid-sentence, followed by a choked whimper of pain. The silence stretched for seconds as Dylan gaped in shock, eyes wide with terror at the whip in my hand. "Who gave you the right to speak to me like that? Came here to throw tantrums after your master's white tiger mauled you? Don't flatter yourself, you're no guest of mine. How dare you filthy beasts lay hands on a princess? Have you no fear of death?" Dylan clenched his teeth against the pain, but his eyes betrayed overwhelming shock. "You always wear that condescending mask. Don't think your push and pull games will make me return with you. You'll never measure up to her, not even close." Though I'd long accepted Dylan never loved me, hearing those cruel words from his lips still made my heart tremble with unbearable pain. My mother passed away young, and my father never showed me kindness. The world always believed Ori was more gifted than me. I never knew favoritism. After decades of raising those merfolk, even they came to despise me. The pain burns, the hatred festers, but helplessness drowns it all. At least this torment ends now. The political marriage in 2 weeks is sealed. This time, I won't refuse for Dylan's sake. Our paths diverge here, forever. I furrowed my brows, forcing back the tears welling up in my eyes once more. "Leave my chambers now, or my whip shall show no mercy." Dylan stood his ground with defiant arrogance, like a thoroughly spoiled kitten. Chapter 2. Gritting my teeth, I raised the whip again, too, but before the whip could strike Dylan this time, the chamber doors were violently kicked open from outside. A cold gust rushed in. Before I could see who entered, a powerful slap already landed across my face. "You whore, consorting with your sister's beastman, are you trying to drive her to her death?" Ori stood there with tear-reddened eyes, simpering as she hid behind the emperor. "I won't take something tainted. If you fancy it so much, sister, why pretend to yield it to me? Just to prove you can snatch what's mine whenever you please." The emperor's eyes blazed with fury. "You wretched creature, just like your shameless mother, utterly disgraceful." Surrounded by maids and ministers hurling insults, Dylan ignored my distress, coiling his tail around my legs with a threatening growl, demanding an immediate explanation. I'd never seen Dylan so frantic. His tail coiled around me with bone-crushing force, as if a second's delay in my explanation would make Ori truly abandon him. "Keeping me here by such means, you may trap my body, but never my heart." Of course I'd clarify things, not to appease Dylan, but because tonight's incident tarnished my reputation, and that would inevitably jeopardize my arranged marriage in 2 weeks. I could endure all the mockery and scorn, but when it comes to leaving this place, I cannot afford the slightest misstep. I spoke in an icy tone, as the crown princess. Both His Majesty and the ministers know I change lodgings nightly to avoid assassination attempts. Even I don't know where I'll sleep tonight. How could I possibly have summoned Dylan? My dear sister, however, is quite chummy with the palace staff, even addressing the chamberlain as sister. She likely knows my whereabouts better than I do. Could it be that this Dylan was sent by her to tarnish my reputation? Little sister, shouldn't you explain why your beast man is in my chambers? My composure was enough to quiet even those who came expecting drama. Ori stammered for ages without giving a proper explanation. Today was just a misunderstanding. Sis, don't be angry. How about I make it up to you by giving him to you? Dylan was shoved forward with obvious reluctance, looking about as willing as a hostage with a knife to their throat. I'll go with you, but leave Ori alone. He's just naive. Never meant you any harm. Dylan shuffled closer to me, eyes shut tight with humiliation. I'll tend to your every need, but if you harass Ori again, don't come begging when I walk away. Dylan's whisper was barely audible, yet it gnawed at my heart like ants. I can't fathom what I've done to make Dylan despise me so. Ignoring Dylan's outstretched hand, I looked up and smiled at Ori. A gift given is not meant to be taken back. If you dislike it, sister, simply discard it. No need for these barbs. I signaled the maid to escort them out. Dylan, who'd been wrestling with his thoughts moments before, now stared at me in blank confusion, clearly unprepared for such an absolute rejection, but that expression lasted only a second before he petulantly turned his head away. In 2 weeks, don't come crying and begging me to return, I'll never come back to you. With a cold snort, he followed Ori out. Dylan thought I was just being spiteful with him, believing his current disheveled state was temporary, that a shallow person like me who only cares about appearances would inevitably come crawling back once he regained his former glory. Since Dylan never cared about me, it's no surprise he forgot how deeply he'd wounded me in our past life. He'd only heard rumors about a grand celebration in 2 weeks, obsessing over how to humiliate me, never realizing that day would be my wedding. Time flew, and those 2 weeks passed in the blink of an eye. On the day of the celebration, Dylan volunteered to perform, true to form. His voice was melodious and his dance mesmerizing. The gauze covering his wounds played peekaboo with the flesh beneath, teasing the imagination with its tantalizing concealment. As the final note faded, thunderous applause erupted. Dylan lifted his chin with pride, knowing he'd made Ori proud. His gaze swept across the audience, yet his thoughts remained loyal to Ori alone. Don't worry, Ori. Even if your sister begged on her knees for me to return, I'd refuse. My heart belongs only to you. He smiled ingratiatingly, but his eyes darted around nervously. After all, Dylan had expected me to come crying and begging for him to take me back by now, or at least play some petty tricks to make Ori's life difficult. But after endless waiting, instead of my appearance, what came was the eunuch's shrill, triumphant announcement: the princess's bridal procession begins. Lift the palanquin. Seated in the bridal sedan, I watched Dylan's disheveled figure in the wind, though my smile remained hidden. The tension in my brow eased slightly. At last, the time had come to leave this place, and with it, to sever all ties of grievance with Dylan once and for all. Amidst the cheerful farewells of countless well-wishers, I closed my eyes in tranquil contentment. Just as I was about to rest, the sedan chair, which had been moving at a steady pace, suddenly began lurching violently. Trembling, I hugged myself tightly as violent clashes erupted outside the bridal sedan, just as I leaned to peek out. A webbed claw tore through my sandalwood palanquin in one swift motion. In my dazed state, I met those crimson-flecked familiar eyes gazing at me with what seemed both petulance and reproach. That usually haughty voice now spoke with an uncharacteristic note of appeasement. Was your decision to marry just another scheme to win me over? I stood frozen, fists clenching involuntarily. But within mere seconds Dylan had already regained his composure. He turned his head conflictedly toward Ori, then bit his lip as his gaze struggled back to me. My deepest apologies for this impropriety. Though mouthing apologies, those webbed talons still clung stubbornly to my sleeve. Alicia, that's enough. You shouldn't play such games with me. I know you haven't forgotten me. Marriage isn't child's play. Don't gamble away your future just to spite me. I promise I'll visit you every 3rd day from now on. Stop acting like a petulant child. He kept talking to himself, then raised his head and stood up, signaling to Ori in hopes of obtaining permission. When I was gravely wounded last time, it was the Grand Princess who provided the ointment that healed me. I owe her my deepest gratitude and wish to serve her with unwavering loyalty. I humbly beg for your approval, my lord. Dylan nervously pressed his lips together, while Ori's face visibly darkened. I've long known this Merman harbors feelings for my sister, but I never imagined she'd go to such lengths just to steal a mere servant from me. Are you throwing this ridiculous tantrum because you're unhappy with my wedding gift? Sis, if that's what my dear sister wants, I'd give you the shirt off my back. Take Dylan then, surely that'll please you. Dylan stood torn between us, unwilling to watch me walk away yet dreading the thought of Ori truly abandoning him. But before he could voice his protest, I spoke first. Guards, slap her mouth. 20 lashes for my dear sister Ori. How dare she humiliate me publicly with some lowly slave, defiling the royal matrimony. This outrage shall not stand. As the words hung in the deathly silence, my elderly eunuch rushed forward without hesitation and struck Ori across the face. The young princess knows no better. It falls to her elder sister to discipline her, but for a wretched slave to make such a spectacle, she deserves this beating. Don't blame this old eunuch for being merciless. Ori was slapped repeatedly, her initial disbelief quickly dissolving into uncontrollable sobs. She turned toward the throne, silently pleading for someone to speak in her defense. But this was my wedding day after all. No matter how much chaos I caused, everyone had to turn a blind eye. As the crowd stood with bowed heads in silence, Dylan stepped forward once more to shield Ori. Alicia, you're being downright vicious. There's no need to torment Ori like this just because of me. I've already said I'm willing to accept you. What more do you want? He crossed his arms and sighed, his every word dripping with accusations of my immaturity. You flatter yourself too much. I've never cared about you, not once. After hearing my words, Dylan doubled over laughing as if he'd just heard the funniest joke. Isn't it obvious you're in love with me? I know you can't let me go. Losing me would be worse than death. Fine. I'll leave Ori and run away with you if I must. What a convincing act. I never realized you were such a skilled performer. Dylan adjusted his clothes nonchalantly, then proceeded to squeeze into the same palanquin with me. In the Great Zhou dynasty, women held such elevated status that even marriage didn't restrict spouses from pursuing separate affairs. It was commonplace for brides to bring their personal slaves into matrimony. Staring at Dylan's smug face, I suddenly let out a derisive snort. Guards, slap his face. My commanding voice rang clear for all to hear, yet Dylan only tilted his head in disbelief. You'd strike me. How could you bear to hit me? Don't any of you dare touch me. Alicia would never hurt me. She's just throwing a tantrum. If you ruin my face, none of you could ever make it right. Dylan thrashed violently, his massive tail and razor-sharp claws keeping the maids and eunuchs at bay. Only I stood by his side, raising my hand without hesitation and striking Dylan across the face with all my might. The sharp crack of the slap instantly drained the fight out of him. You'd actually hit me, just because I didn't choose you as my master. This is how you treat me. Dylan pouted with grievance, those beautiful peach blossom eyes now glistening with unshed tears. How strange. I don't think I've ever seen Dylan like this before. In their past life, Ori adored priceless red pearls. So Dylan resorted to dripping specially concocted poison into his eyes, agonizing effort just to squeeze out 2 tears. He claimed to lack human pain receptors, never having cried since childhood, making this bizarre method his only way to produce tears. He'd sworn he couldn't cry, yet these twin pools of glistening tears now seemed undeniably real. Chapter 3. I withdrew my hand, leaving Dylan frozen in place as I turned and stepped into the waiting palanquin. 3. Before leaving, I lifted the red veil to gaze at Dylan one last time, meeting his nervous yet joyful eyes. I slowly spoke. Keep going, reward Dylan with 300 more slaps. As the curtain fell, the sound of slaps faded into the distance behind me. After 3 days and nights of relentless travel, I finally arrived at my new home where I'd spend the coming years. My husband was often preoccupied, leaving little time for conversation or companionship, though lacking in marital affection. My privileged status ensured a comfortable life nonetheless. Over half a month passed in this manner, with memories fading until Dylan suddenly appeared before me, bold as brass. That night, he stood panting at my window, his arrival heralded by starlight. As if afraid I'd refuse, he awkwardly blurted out first, I didn't come because I like you. I'm just repaying a debt from our past life. I don't want to owe you anything anymore. Stop being stubborn. Living alone in a foreign land must be incredibly hard. You need someone to protect you. Watching Dylan's reluctant demeanor, I gestured for him to leave, but he stubbornly pressed closer instead. I'm exhausted and need to rest inside. No point playing coy when we've already shared a bed. Just let me in. Don't piss me off only to come crawling back with that pathetic act. I hate these games. As he tried to step inside, I panicked and yanked him back. Stay out. Get the hell away from here. Dylan froze, clearly unprepared for my outburst. How dare you tell me to get out? You've never spoken to me like this before. He stormed into the room in a huff and plopped onto my bed. Just as he was about to pull back the covers to climb in, he spotted a furry figure nestled beneath them. The little werewolf blinked sleepily, its voice still thick with childish innocence as it spoke. Mister, who are you? In an instant, the room temperature plummeted to freezing point. Dylan turned to glare at me with murderous intent. Alicia, don't you have anything to say for yourself? Knowing how lethal merfolk could be, I rushed forward to tuck the young werewolf back under the blankets, terrified Dylan might hurt him. None of your business. I told you to get lost. Dylan grabbed my wrist abruptly. As if terrified of hearing words he couldn't bear from my mouth. "You're mad at me because of that little wolf cub. Have you switched your affections? What does that beast have that I don't? If he can warm your bed, so can I. If he knows how to act cute, I can too. How could you change your mind just like that? You knew I was coming, didn't you? You deliberately did this to piss me off. I know you can't possibly stop loving me." Dylan kept rambling to himself like a madman, muttering incessantly. Seeing him about to throw off the covers and attack the little werewolf again, I didn't hesitate to slap Dylan across the face. The sharp slap rang out, and Dylan let out a bitter laugh. "You hit me for him. Why, this is the second time you've laid hands on me. You've never raised a finger against me no matter how angry you were before." Dylan still doesn't understand my actions, clinging to his delusion that I was madly in love with him in our past life. He thinks no matter how much he hurts me, I'll come crawling back, just like that spineless version of me from before. But death taught me the truth. I've seen reality for what it is. In my past life, I worshipped him as the greatest man alive. I'd have died for Dylan without hesitation, yet after all that devotion, my reward was abandonment and a watery grave. Now reborn, I seek neither vengeance nor love, only peace in what remains of this life. But even this modest wish, Dylan won't allow it. He demands my love while insisting I tolerate his affections for others. I massaged my temples in exasperation. How many times must I say it? I don't love you anymore. Too drained to explain further, I watched helplessly as Dylan kept pressing on, smashing every vase on my desk in a fit of rage. "You're lying. Everything you've done was leading me on, playing hard to get, shutting me out, even marrying someone just to get my attention. How could you possibly claim not to care? Stop saying the opposite of what you mean. I guess I've realized maybe I do care about you a little." Another sharp slap cut Dylan's words short, silencing him mid-sentence. "Wake up. If there's any feeling left in me for you, it's pure hatred, the kind that wants to tear you apart piece by piece." I expected Dylan to keep resisting, but he just lifted his head like a lost soul. "Is it really just hatred? Don't you love me at all anymore?" I clenched my fists, letting my nails dig into my palms without changing my stance. "Yes, only hatred remains. What can you possibly do to me?" Dylan was absolutely livid, pounding his head with his fists, tearing out clumps of hair without even flinching from the pain. "It's all Ori's fault. He's the one who deliberately seduced me and made me fall for the wrong person. Otherwise, we'd be as happy together as we were in our past life. You're just blinded by past life grudges. You can't possibly stop loving me just like that." "That's exactly it. I can fix everything. Alicia, just wait for me." After finishing his monologue, he bolted through the window in panic, rubbing my temples in irritation. I watched the little wolf poke its head out from under the blankets. "I'll have your family pick you up tomorrow. You can't keep crashing at my place forever." Recently obsessed with medical arts, I've been spending fortunes hiring impoverished beastfolk with robust constitutions as test subjects. Never expected this little wolf to cause such a mess today. God knows what chaos Dylan's temperament will stir up with Ori when they get back, but that's their life after all. I won't interfere anymore. Seeing the wolf cub still hadn't moved, I urged him again. He whimpered a few times under the blanket. "I don't want to leave. Can't I just stay with you like this forever?" The dim candlelight reflected in the werepup's glistening eyes as his bushy tail wagged eagerly. "My family's too poor to feed me. I'll serve you loyally. Keep that mermaid from harming you. Just give me scraps to eat," he mumbled while shrinking deeper under the blanket, as if afraid I'd send him away. I couldn't help but feel moved. In my past life, I was always the one chasing after Dylan's tail. He was utterly stubborn, one day demanding to leave and the next begging to come home. I exhausted every method just to keep him by my side. When this little wolf suddenly declared he'd protect me, claiming I wasn't touched would be a lie. Maybe it was the loneliness after being alone for so long, or perhaps pity for this little werewolf. But in the end, I nodded. Life went on uneventfully as I taught the little wolf medicinal herbs and healing, with such a bodyguard by my side. Few dared to provoke me recklessly. Then an old eunuch I hadn't seen in years burst in, shattering my peaceful routine once more. "Your Highness, the young princess and the emperor have fallen. You must return at once." The eunuch's words struck me like a thunderbolt, leaving me trembling uncontrollably. No matter how many times I asked, the answer remained the same. While I truly despised Ori and the emperor, never for a single moment had I genuinely wished for their deaths. I pressed the eunuch for details about Ori's death, but was met only with his pained, helpless expression. Not until I rushed back to the palace did I realize how drastically the once majestic and imposing imperial residence had changed. The hall was littered with corpses, rivers of blood flowing across the floor, while my sister Ori's severed head hung from the rafters. "Are you all useless fools? Why did no one protect Ori? Where's the emperor? How dare anyone lay hands on the Son of Heaven?" I screamed in rage, only to find the surrounding courtiers staring vacantly. Not a soul dared meet my eyes or answer my demands. Following their terrified gazes, I finally saw Dylan seated upon the dragon throne. His face was smeared with blood, wounds tearing open across his body, just as broken as when I first laid eyes on him. Finally decided to show yourself. This time, I won't let you walk away. Seeing Dylan like this, the whole truth became painfully clear. There's a horrifying gaping wound in Ori's chest, undoubtedly Dylan's doing, extracting heart's blood to fulfill that twisted wish. Drawing a bowl of the master's heartblood daily through this reckless method accelerates the ritual, just 99 days instead of 999 to activate the wishing array, but such haste comes at terrible risk. One misstep could kill the very master he seeks to control. 98 days of blood harvested, one more, and my wish will drag you back, make you forget everything. Love me like before, but Ori couldn't hold on, saying she was dying. I was so close to success. That bitch must have sabotaged us deliberately. She couldn't stand seeing us in love. I've got nothing left. If I can't have you, I might as well kill them all. At least that way I'd get to see you one last time, Dylan said with a laugh. I can't return to the Orc Kingdom, nor can I go back to you. Life's utterly meaningless now. Let's elope. To the ends of the earth. Somewhere no one will ever find us, or would you die with me? Maybe death could rebirth us, maybe we'd love again in another life. He buried his face in the crook of my neck, his icy body sending shivers down my spine. As the razor edge of his hand grazed my chest, I shoved him violently away and plunged the dagger from my coat toward Dylan's throat. Blood splattered across my face as Dylan's expression visibly contorted with rage. Chapter 4. When he lunged at me again. The young werewolf instantly leapt in front of me without hesitation, for, within seconds, the two beasts were locked in a frenzied brawl. The smaller wolf cub quickly found himself overpowered after just a few exchanges. I knew hesitation would cost me everything. If the cub fell, death would be my only fate. Desperate, I sprinted to the white tiger's cage, wrenching the locks open with all my strength to free the massive beast, having witnessed its master Ori die by Dylan's hand. Its hatred burned as fiercely as mine. In a blink, it was upon Dylan, claws and fangs tearing savagely. With lightning reflexes, I grabbed the injured wolf cub and yanked him to safety, watching as the two savage beasts tore into each other. Dylan was already gravely wounded, now hanging by a thread. Within an hour, he collapsed like a dying man, before the white tiger's fangs found his throat. He mustered his last strength to look up at me. You said you still loved me a little, didn't you? Why did you change so suddenly? You promised to love me forever. I bit my lip and shook my head under Dylan's hopeful gaze. With a sickening crack, Dylan's neck snapped like a severed kite string, sending his head lolling to the ground. The white tiger with fierce eyes collapsed beside Ori, drawing its last ragged breath. Ori was gone, Dylan was gone, everything was resolved, as if all my love and hatred had dissipated into thin air. I clutched my chest. A bittersweet mix of loneliness and joy swirling inside. In the end, I stepped over Dylan's lifeless body. Come on, little wolf, let's go home. Story 2. As the year-end approaches, my parents either sold or gave away all the New Year goods I had stockpiled. I desperately tried to convince them that an extreme cold apocalypse was coming, only to be mocked. What era are you living in, still hoarding New Year supplies? Daughters are never as considerate as sons. Always fobbing us off with useless things. Your brother said he's taking us to Hainan for vacation during the new year. When the first cold wave hit, due to scarce supplies, my younger brother schemed with our parents to kick me out just to get an extra bite of meat. I was shivering in the blizzard when I got a call from my otaku best friend. Want to come celebrate New Year at my place? There's way too much food and we can't finish it all. Remembering my best friend's habit of stockpiling supplies, I happily moved into her home. Little did I expect, my ungrateful younger brother and parents would soon come knocking on my best friend's door too. Verina's invitation was nothing short of a lifeline for me, but I knew Verina never followed the news and likely hadn't heard about the cold wave. She also didn't realize how crucial supplies were now, so I gave her a heads up first. There's been extreme weather this year, potentially leading to a prolonged, large-scale cold wave. The New Year's goods I bought for my family were sold by my parents, and now they're worried about food shortages, so they've kicked me out. I'm currently homeless. Verina is someone who can stay indoors for half a year without going out. She definitely can't imagine how cold it is outside. I was bundled up from head to toe, wearing 3 layers of thermal pants alone, yet still felt like I was about to freeze into numbness. There were no other pedestrians on the road besides me, after all. The snow accumulation has become so thick that traffic in many areas has been paralyzed, and frequent water and power outages have started occurring these days. The news says this might just be the first wave of cold air, and temperatures will continue to drop, with various communication systems also being affected. Verina blinked upon hearing this. Why are you telling me this? Afraid you'll eat me out of house and home. What era is this? Would your family really kick someone out over a meal? Come over quick, I guarantee we could lounge at home for half a year and still live in luxury. Hearing Verena mention my family brought their faces to mind, and I felt a wave of disgust. Originally, I had bought a pile of New Year's goods for the family before the holiday, from daily groceries like rice and oil to big-ticket items like alcohol and electronics. Back then, our boss hinted that there might be a cold wave this year affecting the return to work. This year's year-end bonus for working overtime on projects was just issued, and before prices rise, I used this money to specifically stock up on a lot of supplies. I bought beef and pork by the hundreds of pounds, and also added a double-door refrigerator and a freezer. It should last us at least half a year. I've even planned out entertainment options beyond just daily necessities. Purchased fitness equipment and high-end electronic devices, but when I got home, there was nothing in the house. When I confronted him, Levi didn't even look up from playing his new gaming console on the sofa. We already have a fridge at home. Why did you buy another one that just takes up space? Someone in our social circle happened to be looking to buy one, so my parents simply sold it. As for all that meat and rice, how long will it take you to eat that much? It's not like we have fridge space for it anyway, right? Besides, I don't want to eat freezer-burned meat. I laughed in frustration. Then what about all those fitness equipment and large electronic products I bought? Levi said impatiently. I told you it takes up space. And what does a woman know about electronics anyway? The computer you bought has terrible value for money. Selling it early means recouping losses sooner. I sneered. Don't think I don't know. Levi, Mom and Dad are helping you pay off debts. Your debt collectors have even called me. I never expected you'd even set your sights on the little New Year's groceries I bought. Sensing the situation was amiss, Athena quickly shielded Levi. Arya, you're being way too harsh on your brother. If you knew he had debts, why didn't you help him pay some off? You clearly have money to buy all these things. You really don't know how to be considerate of family. Rex glanced at me between scrolling through short videos. Keep talking and she'll start using that cold wave nonsense again. Your brother said if there's really some big temperature drop, we'll just vacation in Sonia or the Maldives, nice and comfortable. Having grown accustomed to my parents' favoritism, I'd long lost the energy to argue and simply went back to my room to sleep. Outside the door, my parents were still muttering, "This girl has such a temper, and we didn't even say anything wrong. Let's arrange a blind date for her in a few days. Once she's married, her temper will naturally mellow out." Didn't Levi's girlfriend demand a 300,000 betrothal gift? I was so foolish, after more than 20 years still naively hoping that giving would earn me their love. At that moment, Verena's voice pulled me back from my memories. Hey, just the New Year's goods you sent me earlier would last a long time. But let's finish what I've stockpiled first, or they'll go past their expiry date. Watching the stacks of cardboard boxes behind Verena in the video, I was nearly moved to tears. Verena grew up living with her grandmother and developed an unshakable hoarding habit. She never throws away takeout utensils, paper bags, or electronic components, and buys rice, oil, and salt in bulk by the box. If it weren't for her slight obsession with cleanliness, her home would probably have turned into a massive landfill by now. After hanging up the phone, I trudged unevenly toward Verena's house. She and I grew up together. She lives in the neighborhood next door. After her family member died in a car accident, she developed some psychological barriers, leading to unemployment as she became afraid to go outside. Fortunately, her expenses are low, and between my occasional care and the hefty insurance payout left by her family, she's set for life without financial worries. When Verena opened the door, she shivered from the chill I brought in with me. She stared at my frost-covered eyelashes in shock and said, Is it really that cold outside?" As soon as the door opened, the warm air inside brought me back to life. Thankfully, it was only 600 meters to Verena's place. Any farther, and I might have frozen solid on the way. Verena lives in a 3-story villa, but upon entering the living room, one immediately sees piles of delivery boxes. She said sheepishly, "After the new year, I'll clear all this stuff out," during the Double 12 sale. I even stocked up on 50 boxes of sanitary pads. I know hoarding is bad, but I just can't help it. Before she could finish speaking, I looked at the room full of supplies and exclaimed excitedly, "Who says hoarding is bad? It's fantastic." Verena wore a completely bewildered expression. After all, every time I came to Verena's house before, it was to help her organize things and persuade her to go out for a walk. But I had no time to explain. Instead, I was taking stock of what Verena had bought. Until Verena asked, "What on earth happened? Did you just get kicked out like that?" I suddenly calmed down. Early this morning, I woke up from the cold. The temperature drop came more suddenly than imagined. When I pushed open the bedroom door, my parents and Levi were shivering while changing the bedding. "Is it really going to get colder? The wind last night kept me awake all night." I didn't say anything, just went straight to find my thick bedding. The top of the cabinet was completely empty. I turned to my parents and demanded, "You sold my newly bought quilt, so where's my old one?" After thinking for a moment, they replied matter-of-factly, "Last time your second aunt came over, she took your down comforter since it looked nice. After all, you only come home for a couple of days during New Year's anyway." While we were talking, the snow outside piled several feet higher, Levi said irritably while looking at his phone. "Flights and high-speed trains are all cancelled. Looks like our travel plans are ruined." At that moment, a notification popped up on our phones. Athena read it out in surprise. "What? All the shops outside have closed. This is so sudden." Actually, the weather forecast had warned about the cold wave multiple times, and online discussions had already stirred up public anxiety. The weather had been relatively warm just a few days ago, and since we're in a more southern region, the coldest it usually gets is around -10 degrees Celsius, so they simply didn't believe what I said. Athena said with a pale face, "I only bought ingredients for tonight's New Year's Eve dinner. Oh dear, I should have saved some of the meat Arya bought." Rex remained perfectly calm. "What's there to fear? How long can the cold last in the south? This heavy snow might look intense now, but it'll melt away in just a day. The ingredients we prepared for the New Year's Eve dinner, if we ration them carefully, can last us several days." Levi's eyes darted around a few times. "With just a day or two of snow, surely not all the shops outside would be closed. Our family's food supplies aren't enough. Sis, why don't you go out and take a look, buy some food, and while you're at it, get yourself a set of bedding too." With that, Levi shoved me out the door. He was a grown man after all, and with just a bit of force. My wrist turned red. Rex sat on the sofa and remarked approvingly, "Too. This kid actually knows to care for his sister now. How sensible." Seeing this, Rex, who was sitting on the sofa, spoke up to stop them. "Levi, no need to make your sister go outside to find food," Levi said discontentedly. "Dad, why are you so biased? After we finish this New Year's Eve dinner, won't our whole family have to live on nothing but the northwest wind?" Rex proudly shook his phone. "That Dashiell upstairs, I saw his family went on a big shopping trip to the supermarket last time. I asked around and sure enough, they've got plenty of supplies." Levi looked at the supply photos Dashiell sent in the chat log, his eyes filled with greed. "This should last at least 2 months, right? But would he just give it to us easily?" Athena, who had been frowning in the kitchen, rushed over immediately. "Isn't that Dashiell who's been chasing after your sister? Oh, just have your sister go to his place and say a few nice words." My expression suddenly turned cold. "I won't go. What you call pursuit is just him cornering me in alleyways at night and getting handsy." Athena spat in disgust, her face full of disdain. "How can a girl like you be so shameless with your words? Saying whatever comes to mind. Have you no decency? Why does he only harass you and not others?" "It's because he likes you too much." I knew Athena's temperament well and didn't argue with her, just warned her, "You all know exactly what kind of person Dashiell is. Having a son-in-law like him wouldn't bring you much comfort either." Dashiell dropped out of junior high and entered society early, never holding a proper job. He even served several years in prison for brawling and causing trouble. Relying mainly on his widowed mother's pension for livelihood, Dashiell's mother has repeatedly visited their home, hinting at marriage intentions, but in the past, Athena and Rex would never have considered their mother-son pair worthy. In their eyes, I'm a college student, and the bride price they value is something Dashiell's family can't afford. Moreover, Dashiell's mother isn't an easy person to get along with, and the neighbors generally avoid Dashiell's family like the plague. Rex's eyes darkened, yet he spoke up for me. "Arya is right. Someone like Dashiell isn't worthy of being my son-in-law. Don't be angry." With that, Rex handed me a glass of water. I was trembling with anger at Athena's words, so I wanted to take a sip of water to calm myself. When I woke up again, the unfamiliar decor of the room made my heart skip a beat. Turning my head, I saw Dashiell's cold, piercing eyes. I quickly sat up and demanded, "How did I end up in your house?" Dashiell took a drag of his cigarette and blew the smoke right into my face, making me cough uncontrollably. "Your parents traded you to me for 10 pounds of meat. Lucky for you I like you, otherwise you'd be so generous these days, giving away 10 pounds of meat just like that." I wanted to leave the room, but as soon as I stood up, Dashiell pushed me to the ground. "Where do you think you're going? You've been sold to me." The fat under Dashiell's chin quivered, making me nauseous, and I retched. "You filthy bitch, what are you pretending for? Acting all high and mighty usually, yet here you are lying beneath me." Provoked, Dashiell started pulling at my pants, but because of the cold, I was wearing 4 or 5 layers of pants, and my upper body was tightly wrapped in multiple layers. Dashiell cursed under his breath, then began unbuttoning my clothes. Seizing the opportunity, I grabbed the vase on the nightstand and smashed it against Dashiell's head with all my strength. Instantly, He fell backward from the heavy blow, blood streaming from his temple. I took this chance to run outside. Dashiell's mother in the living room saw me coming out alone and quickly stopped me. "You can't run away. You're the daughter-in-law I bought with 10 pounds of meat." I pushed him away and said coldly, "If you don't go check on your son in the room soon, he might die." Dashiell's mother rushed toward the room. "What have you done to my son, you vile woman?" But at this moment, Dashiell had regained some consciousness. Gnashing his teeth, he roared, "Mom, don't let him escape. I'm going to kill that bitch." Seeing Dashiell's miserable state, his mother was absolutely furious and immediately tried to grab me. Fortunately, I had already opened the door and quickly fled downstairs. As I was telling Verena about these experiences, my eyes turned red. Verena gently patted my back and pointed to the snow still falling outside the window. Outside the window, snowflakes were pouring down wildly and recklessly. The sky was covered with lead-gray clouds, creating a grim and oppressive feeling along with the overwhelming snow curtain. The entire world seemed to have been paused by this blizzard, sinking into complete silence. Verena said, "All the filth and turmoil in this world will be buried by this snow." I also nodded, reigniting my fighting spirit. "We haven't taken stock of our supplies yet." Verena pretended to be angry and said, "Are you underestimating me? The villa has 3 floors plus a basement, enough food to last us at least 3 years. As night fell, Verena and I shared a hot pot meal before squeezing together to sleep. The next morning, I woke up shivering again, my breath visible in the cold air. I shrank further into the quilt and nudged Verena awake. "Verena, I think the heating's gone out." Verena suddenly became wide awake upon hearing this. Though I didn't know the exact temperature, I still felt freezing under the dozen-pound blanket. I don't know when the heating stopped, but in such extreme weather, if we had woken up any later, Verena and I might have frozen stiff. I tapped the already frozen mineral water bottle and said worriedly, "We still need to warm up. It's this cold indoors, but the electricity is out too. The solar panels on your villa are just a drop in the bucket, and there's no sunlight now. If this continues, we won't even have water to drink." Verena said leisurely, "Looks like we'll have to live a primitive life. No electricity, then let's make a fire." I exclaimed in shock, "You can actually make fire by drilling wood? I didn't know you had the skill." "Surely not by drilling wood. I have no outdoor survival experience." As she spoke, Verena led me to the basement, pointing at the sizable stock of firewood, hay, and charcoal. She said, "I haven't stockpiled much, but it should last for a while, right?" Thinking it's Verena hoarding these firewood and hay is still more acceptable than her trying to start a fire by rubbing sticks. Our house has a European style, and the basement is quite damp, so my dad built a closet stove. She pointed at that large pile of firewood stacked decoratively into beautiful shapes. These weren't originally meant to be fuel, but rather Rex's handmade artworks. However, desperate times call for desperate measures, and now they're serving their purpose. Verena pointed to the messy pile and said, "These were actually prepared by me. I occasionally come to the closet to read, and the crackling sound of the fire always brings me comfort. It makes me feel like my parents are still here. I don't like having outsiders around often either, so I usually stockpile a lot. I just had a new batch delivered not long ago." Verena pulled out another outdoor snow tent. "The basement is naturally a bit warmer than upstairs, and there's also a closet. Sleeping in a tent with a thick sleeping bag at night should at least prevent someone from dying in their sleep." I asked excitedly, "You actually stockpiled outdoor gear too?" Verena says, "My parents were both outdoor enthusiasts. After they passed away in a car accident, I'd still look at these products, guessing what they would have liked. The villa is so big. Only by filling it up more and more does my heart feel less empty." We lay together in the tent, listening to the sound of fire burning in the stove, feeling the warmth from each other's bodies, and instantly felt much more comfortable. But before long, a tremendous noise came from outside. It was so loud that even the soundproof basement could hear it. Verena and I exchanged glances and immediately went up to check the situation. Open the door now, Verena, we're Aria's family." Rex and Levi were seen attempting to climb the fence of the yard, while Athena stomped her feet to keep warm and shouted loudly. Seeing this, Verena yelled outside, "What are you doing?" "Spotting someone in the house," Athena exclaimed joyfully. "Verena, we're here looking for Aria. Did she come to see you?" Verena said coldly, "I haven't seen her. You're trespassing." Athena rubbed her hands. "What kind of talk is this? We're at least her elders. It's so cold out, won't you invite us in for some tea?" Rex said while climbing. This little girl's heart is too cruel. She's determined to watch us die with her own eyes." Verena asked loudly, "Since you know how bitterly cold it is outside, why would you risk your lives to come here?" Athena gritted her teeth in anger. "It's all because of that wretched girl. Not only did she run away, but she also beat Dashiell up like that. Because of her, Dashiell came to our place and took our meat again. He even beat up her father. Since you two are close friends, That damn girl must have come to you, only to hear Levi, frozen and furious, retort, "What do you mean trespassing? Do you see anyone left to care about you? Let us in for some tea now, and I'll still consider you my sister's good friend. Otherwise, once we force our way in, things won't be so pleasant." Usually they'd maintain some pretense of seniority before Verena, but now their true colors were showing. They must have been desperate, yet dared not provoke Dashiell, seeing me run away. They remembered Verena among their nearby acquaintances. The girl had a gentle temperament and lived alone, an easy target at first glance. Even if I hadn't come to Verena, they would have schemed to exploit her vulnerability. Verena had never seen such a shameless person and was trembling with anger. I patted her shoulder to comfort her. The courtyard fence is high with spikes on top, and the railings are covered in slippery snow. Even if someone could climb over, they'd be half dead by the time they got in. Verena closed the gate and said worriedly, "That being said, they are now fugitives and will surely do everything they can to break in. Once they're in the yard, there's only the security door left. Even if they can't get in, sitting idly by while they destroy the yard gate would make us even more vulnerable to other criminals in the future." Levi was already nearing the top with the support of Athena and Rex. I quickly asked, "I remember your house has an activity room. We might find some protective gear there." The activity room is on the first floor, with some fitness equipment and musical instruments covered in dust, drum set, treadmill, baseball bat. I tried hard to find equipment that could be useful now. Soon, I spotted the target by the wall and my eyes lit up. Although indoor archery doesn't have much killing power, they're frozen stiff outside. This impact might just knock them down, even if it doesn't hit. People panic when attacked and can easily fall off. Verena patted her chest confidently and said, "Who says it won't hit? My aim is excellent." When going out with the bow and arrow, Levi was stuck atop the iron gate, hesitating before the sharp spikes. "Levi, don't be afraid. At worst, you'll get a little hurt. Just steel your heart and get through it, then open the door for us." It was Rex who spoke, clearly growing impatient with Levi's hesitation. After all, even with his entire face wrapped in a thick scarf, he was still stomping his feet from the cold. Levi had never known hardship since childhood. The spikes on the door and the 2-meter height made him nervous, not to mention the cold that had him shivering. At that moment, he saw Verena open the window and, thinking she had taken pity, quickly begged for mercy. "Verena, please let us in. I'll serve you like a slave." "Okay." Verena smiled. Athena also thought there was hope and quickly added, "Indeed. It seems Arya has died out there, and you're left without parents. We might as well become a family. You and our Levi would make a good match. Perhaps even start a..." Before Athena could finish, she saw Verena raising her bow to aim at Levi. Her face instantly paled with fright. "What do you want?" Verena skillfully drew her bow, sending an arrow flying swiftly through the air. "Murder, murder." Athena was so frightened she immediately crouched down, covering her head and screaming, while Levi, who had just barely steadied himself, was startled by the commotion. With a thud, he fell into the snow. Even with the cushioning of the snow, he fell hard and couldn't get up for a while. I didn't lean out to look, but hearing such a loud noise, I couldn't help exclaiming in shock, "Your archery is this good?" Verena was also a bit confused, then gave me an awkward smile. The next second, Rex's angry voice was heard. "That arrow didn't even fly past the gate. What are you all panicking about?" Athena quickly went to help Levi, who had fallen on the ground, complaining, "Who would have thought a little girl could be so ruthless?" We were quite shocked too. Rex smiled coldly. "No problem. If the three of us can't get what we want, there are plenty of other desperados out there. While there's still some signal left, I'll just share your address with others. Who knows how many supplies a little girl living alone in a villa might have." My gaze lowered as well, and I whispered to Verena, "Tell them to come at this time tonight and exchange quilts for food." Although confused, Verena still shouted to Rex as I instructed, "Wait, I do have some meat to share with you, but you'll need to trade quilts for it. I'll be waiting for you at the door tonight." Athena immediately agreed upon hearing this. "It's just a blanket, isn't it? Why didn't you mention exchanging earlier if it was possible?" I sneered. They never intended to make an exchange in the first place. Seeing that brute force wouldn't work, they settled for a compromise. Rex's mind worked the fastest, and a hypocritical smile appeared on his face. "We've always been warm here. You live alone, so you probably don't have many thick quilts at home, but that's easily solved. If I'd known you were short of supplies, Verena, I would have brought them to you sooner." Why is a young girl so distrustful? Verena didn't deny it either. She just said, "Hurry back and get it. I need to return to the house to find food too." After Rex and the other two left, Verena wondered, "Why do this? If we give them food this time, they'll surely come asking again, maybe even barging into our house at night. Besides, we're not short of quilts anyway. Go boil some water." The power supply has been unstable these days, usually only providing temporary electricity and water for a brief period in the afternoon. It probably won't be long before we experience complete outages of water, electricity, and heating. Boil water. Verena was puzzled, but immediately started helping me with the task. You're right. Greed knows no bounds. Getting entangled with such people would surely cost you dearly. In the past, bound by inseparable blood ties, I knew their hearts were black and biased, yet I still sank helplessly into the quagmire, becoming their blood supply. But now, I can't let my weakness implicate Verena. And I boiled 3 large buckets of water and placed them on the second-floor balcony, directly facing the entrance door on the first floor. By the time we finished all this, it was almost dark. Rex and the others didn't even wait until nightfall. They came directly with the quilt Verena requested. The bags containing thick cotton quilts were all frosted over. All 3 of them were panting heavily. The snow had grown much deeper by nightfall, making it unsuitable to venture outside anymore. To make matters worse, they were carrying cotton quilts weighing over 10 pounds. Though the distance wasn't long, it was still exhausting. Verena, I won't take advantage of you either. This quilt weighs 12 pounds. So just give us 12 pounds of meat and 40 pounds of rice. I stood by the second-floor window, peering down below. Athena was lying. The heaviest quilt at home barely weighs 10 pounds, yet she's making outrageous demands. Verena remotely opened the gate for them and signaled them to leave the quilts. The supplies Verena provided were also left at the doorway: half a side of pork and 2 sacks of rice, far more than what Athena had asked for. This should last you for a while. I don't have any more to spare. They stared at the supplies that exceeded their expectations without showing delight, their eyes darting around restlessly. Verena, you must have more than just this at home, right? Verena was clearly angered by their insatiable greed. I have to keep something for myself, don't I? Rex took over the conversation. Of course, but it's dark now and getting colder. Let us stay overnight. I promise we'll leave first thing tomorrow morning. Verena stopped responding. Moments later, the door handle was being twisted frantically. A stone also hit the window, accompanied by low curses. You bitch, refusing a toast only to be forced to drink a forfeit. Rex unexpectedly pulled out an axe and violently hacked at the front door, startling everyone. But the next second, several buckets of water suddenly poured from above, drenching all 3 of them. Even boiling water turned nearly ice cold by the time it splashed onto Rex and the other 2. In weather like this, wearing soaked clothes is almost unbearable. Rex could barely even hold the axe anymore, but when life hangs in the balance, people can summon an unexpected strength to fight against all odds. They realized that breaking into this villa was their last resort. Just as they were about to desperately crash into the glass, I called out through it, "Dad, Mom." Both Rex and Athena froze, but what followed was even greater anger. Then came the same accusations as before. I bowed my head, not arguing to provoke them further, letting them vent their emotions in the face of death's terror. Water conducts heat 25 times better than air, and wet clothing causes rapid body heat loss. At least 3 minutes have passed since I came downstairs, until I saw their mouths trembling so much they couldn't form complete sentences. They finally realized the urgency of the situation and started ramming the door with their bodies. But it was already too late. Moments later, 3 ice sculptures appeared before my eyes. Verena had already put on her gloves and helped me drag these 3 ice sculptures outside, then closed the courtyard gate again. Early the next morning, I was busy in the kitchen preparing a steaming hot breakfast. Sleepy-eyed Verena sat at the dining table devouring her meal, but when she glanced downstairs, she suddenly became wide awake. Those 3 ice sculptures seemed to have been dragged away. I did hear some rustling noises outside last night. I picked up a piece of beef for Verena and sighed. These days, meat is truly a good thing. Following Verena's gaze, I saw only a vast expanse of whiteness outside the yard. Everything had been cleared away. The temperature continued to drop day by day like this. Verena tore off another page from the calendar. It's already June, yet snow continues to fall outside. Fortunately, there was a brief warm spell in between. Otherwise, even well-prepared people like Verena and I would struggle to endure such extreme weather, but today was different from the usual silence. A soft knocking sound came from outside the courtyard. Verena and I exchanged glances, both seeing the same question in each other's eyes. Who could it be? The neighbors nearby used to make some noise a couple of months ago, but lately, the surroundings have grown increasingly quiet. Verena and I have been spending most of our time holed up in the basement. A young girl's crisp voice rang out from outside the door. Is anyone there? Could you spare some food? Looking through the glass, Verena saw a girl of about 12 or 13, bundled in thick clothing, standing alone outside the door. Her heart was immediately moved with compassion. The girl is so young, shall we give her some bread? I neither objected nor agreed, but simply reminded her How did such a small child manage to survive alone until now? Verena understood the implication behind my words and immediately deflated, but the hesitation in Verena's eyes remained clearly visible. She bit her lip and whispered, "Maybe she's truly just starving. If we just give her some food, it should be fine, right?" Yet moments later, she contradicted herself again. Am I being too much of a saint? Still worrying about others at a time like this? I patted her on the shoulder and said, "5, Verena. In this apocalyptic world, you'll find all kinds of people, better be cautious, but since we still have some strength left, it's good if we can help others." We quietly observed the little girl through the window. She was shivering from the cold, constantly blowing on her hands, her eyes filled with helplessness. Verena couldn't hold back anymore and whispered, "How about I take some bread to the door and pass it to her through the crack?" Without opening it directly, I thought for a moment and nodded. Verena took a few pieces of bread and carefully walked to the door, speaking through it. "Little one, pass the bag in your hand through the door crack, and I'll fill it with bread for you." The little girl obediently did as told, her voice trembling with tears. "Thank you, sister. I haven't eaten anything for several days." Verena packed the bread and passed it through the iron door crack. The little girl took the bread but didn't dare to eat it, carefully tucking it into her clothes. At that moment, I noticed a figure flashing by in the distance. Though it was just a fleeting glimpse, I thought the silhouette looked very much like Dashiell. My heart tightened. After confirming the little girl wasn't carrying anything dangerous, I opened the door just a crack and pulled her inside. "Have a cup of hot tea." Verena seemed surprised by my actions. The little girl stood in the courtyard, the vulnerability in her eyes turning to wariness. Verena smiled and said, "Little one, why are you outside alone? Do you have any family?" The little girl lowered her head and whispered, "My parents are both dead. I've always been alone." I stared at her and suddenly asked, "Do you know Dashiell?" The little girl shuddered, a flash of panic in her eyes, but quickly composed herself. "Who is Dashiell? I don't know him." I led her inside and saw her eyes light up at the sight of the supplies in the house. "We have enough supplies to support one more like you. Tell me the truth, and I'll guarantee your survival. Otherwise, now that you know our secret, you won't leave this house alive." The little girl's eyes were full of struggle. Finally, she burst into tears, rolled up her sleeve, and revealed the mottled bruises on her arm. "Sister, I didn't want to do this either. Dashiell forced me. He said he'd beat me to death if I didn't help him scam food. He made me pretend to be pitiful to deceive kind-hearted people. Many fell for it, and he took everything they gave." Verena and I exchanged glances, our suspicions confirmed. I crouched down and said to the little girl, "Do you want to escape from Dashiell? We can help you, but you'll need to follow our instructions." The little girl quickly nodded. "I think, sister, I'll do whatever you ask me to." I whispered a few words in her ear, and after hesitating for a moment, the little girl agreed, as planned. The little girl went back to tell Dashiell that we had abundant supplies here, and there was only one woman in the villa who would be easy to deal with. Dashiell was indeed tempted, and that very night, he stealthily crept into the yard. We had already set up an ambush inside the house. The moment they entered, I struck Dashiell hard on the head with a baseball bat, and he passed out without even a groan. When Dashiell woke up, he found himself on the rooftop, with no one around. The howling wind seemed determined to extinguish the last flicker of hope within him. I slowly emerged from the shadows, each step heavy with purpose, staring coldly at him. "Dashiell, look at you now," he screamed in terror. "Arya, how could it be you? Let me go." Dashiell growled viciously, "You dare touch me. The central authorities have detected that the temperature will rise soon. Murder is illegal. Once things return to normal, you'll be arrested." I picked up a bucket of water and slowly walked toward him. The water sloshed inside the bucket, making an unsettling sound. I retorted, "Isn't it perfectly normal for people to freeze to death in this kind of weather?" After saying this, I repeated my old trick and poured the water over him. Startled by the cold water, Dashiell struggled frantically, but bound tightly as he was, escape proved impossible. His body gradually stiffened under the cold's assault, each shiver like a final stand against death itself. His eyes brimmed with terror and despair. All traces of his former arrogance utterly vanished. As time passed, his cries grew fainter and fainter. A faint sense of "the fox mourns the death of the hare" arose in my heart. In this apocalyptic world, life is so fragile, regardless of good or evil. I never thought Dashiell was telling the truth. As the days passed, August arrived, and the weather truly began to warm up. The thick snow began to melt slowly, with occasional sunlight piercing through the clouds, bringing a glimmer of life to this once ice-covered land. Under the eaves, crystal-clear water droplets continuously fell, producing crisp sounds, as if nature was playing a symphony of rebirth. Yet, behind this seemingly beautiful scene lies the heavy price humanity pay for defying nature. Countless lives were lost, homes destroyed, and social order collapsed. Everything needed to start anew, however. That little girl suddenly disappeared. Later we learned that she had turned herself in. She confessed all the bad things she had done under Dashia's coercion, hoping for forgiveness and a fresh start. Verena and I cleaned up the villa together, watching the world outside gradually regain its vitality, filled with emotions in our hearts. Verena whispered softly, "This disaster has changed too much. Water, electricity, and communications have been gradually restored." The crisp voice of the female host came from the television. "What we need to rebuild in the future is not just our homes, but also the harmonious relationship between humans and nature, as well as reverence for life. We once turned a deaf ear to nature's warnings, overexploiting, ravaging the environment, until we unleashed this near-cataclysmic disaster. Though this winter has passed, its hard-learned lesson will forever haunt us. Nature's power is boundless, and humanity stands so insignificant before it." Story 2. After enduring 20 days of scorching heat, a torrential downpour lasted for a day and a night. Everyone was elated, unexpectedly, that rain would continue for an entire year. 1. Finally, it's raining, feels cool, damn this weather, thought you were tough, keep the sun coming. At the supermarket entrance, the crowd sheltering from the rain was in high spirits. Some even dived headfirst into the rainwater. Thoroughly enjoying the rare coolness, I walked out of the supermarket, carrying a bag of pork, and frowned as the rain outside grew heavier. It's not that I dislike rain. The heat had been nearly unbearable for days, and the rain was a welcome relief. However, I have a phobia of rainwater. 3 years ago, I drove into a lake on a rainy night and nearly drowned when my car was submerged. I wouldn't have survived if the car window hadn't shattered. Since then, I've developed a psychological shadow over water. Even the sight of rain makes me nervous. I took out my phone to check the weather forecast. Starting today, the temperature would gradually drop from the intense 43.5 degrees Celsius to a more comfortable 33 degrees Celsius. This was good news, but it came with persistent rainfall. The forecast predicted continuous rain for the next week. Sometimes in the morning, sometimes in the evening, mostly light to moderate rain. I sighed, returned to the supermarket, and prepared to stock up. During the previous heat wave, I hadn't hoarded much, but with the ongoing rain, I was reluctant to go out, so I planned to stock up enough food to last a week without leaving home. 10 boxes of steak, 12 pounds of frozen chicken wings, 3 bags of dumplings, 4 bags of glutinous rice balls. These were my favorites. I also bought a large bag of tomatoes and sweet potatoes, along with a box of mixed grain porridge and a box of instant noodles. This should last me a week, or even a month if I ration it. After purchasing the supplies, I took a rideshare home. I live in a mid-range residential area, in a modest 90 square meter apartment on the 3rd floor. After moving the groceries inside, the rain seemed to intensify, pelting the windows as if it could shatter them at any moment. Outside was a blanket of gray. The people who had been celebrating in the rain probably went home to take shelter. I drew the curtains and called my parents. They live in the mountains back home, and the heavy rain was affecting them too. "Zoe, be careful, this rain is fierce and seems to be getting stronger," my dad cautioned over the phone, mentioning he hadn't seen such heavy rain in many years. "Dad, you need to be careful too. I'll be fine here, and I won't be going out anytime soon. You guys should stay off the fields too," I advised him in return. My dad repeatedly agreed, reminding me to move to higher ground in case of flooding. He knew about my fear of rain, so he was overly cautious. I wanted to laugh, nodded, and made sure he understood. After hanging up, I took a hot shower and went to sleep deeply. When I woke up the next day, it was still storming outside, with countless raindrops hammering the windows like pebbles. It was still raining, and still a downpour. Normally, a storm wouldn't last this long. Many last only about half an hour. The weather forecast had mentioned that today's rainfall wouldn't start until the evening. Why is there such a heavy downpour so early in the morning? I pulled back the curtains to look outside and realized I couldn't even see the complex clearly. There was too much mist from the rain. The lights from the building across were blurred and indistinct. What heavy rain! At that moment, the property management sent a notice in the chat group. "Dear residents, the Meteorological Bureau has issued a red alert for torrential rain. Please try to stay indoors and make sure your doors and windows are securely closed to avoid unnecessary damage." A red alert for torrential rain means that rainfall will exceed 100 millimeters within 3 hours, a remarkably high amount. Government agencies must now take immediate actions for flood emergency response and rescue, and all outdoor operations must cease. The chat group was bustling, however. Nobody was panicking. Some even joked about the rain cooling things down if it continued for a few more days, but by the next day, with the rain still pouring, the mood among the residents had soured. "This is outrageous. It's been raining heavily since the day before yesterday. The 3rd level of the parking garage is about to flood. Anyone who has a car there better move it quickly. I can't even go out to buy groceries today. If it doesn't stop raining, we'll run out of food at home." I didn't join the discussion. Instead, I just checked the windows to make sure they were locked tight. Since I had stocked up on supplies, I wasn't immediately worried about running out of food. I didn't believe it would continue raining for a week, but it really did rain for an entire week. Every morning, I woke up to find the rain hadn't stopped and was just as intense, still on the highest level of red alert. My windows were now shaking, with rainwater seeping through the crevices. It was genuinely alarming. My parents called multiple times to check on me. I reassured them that everything was fine, though I felt far from okay. For 7 whole days and nights, the rain never ceased. Our city, a city, was trending online, but so were other cities because the rain wasn't confined to just our location. A city was just one of the first lucky ones. I specifically looked up related information and found that Europe, Southeast Asia, and North America had also begun experiencing continuous rainfall. It was highly unusual. During my studies, I had researched the history of mass extinctions and clearly remembered that the Earth once had rained for 2 million years, after which the ecosystem drastically changed and dinosaurs rose. I'm already fearful of rain, and my mind couldn't help but draw parallels between this downpour and that 2 million year rainfall. Back in the chat group, residents were helping each other out, exchanging potatoes for instant noodles, pork for vegetables. I still had plenty of supplies since I hadn't been eating much or cooking a lot. With quite a bit of meat left in my freezer, I could hold on for another week without any issues. But if the rain continued for another week, would our city have a collapse? I went to the window again to check outside. I still couldn't see clearly. Not even the artificial pond was visible. In the group, the property management sent another urgent notice. Emergency notice, please relocate furniture and belongings from the first floor of each building promptly. The complex is extensively flooded, and the water is likely to rise to the ground floor. Everyone was shocked by the announcement. If the first floor was about to flood, then the underground parking garage must already be a reservoir. Our complex isn't situated in a high area, but it shouldn't be flooding like this, right? Impossible, the complex is flooded. After a week of torrential rain, flooding is possible anywhere. I just tried calling the fire department, and I couldn't get through. It's chaos everywhere. I heard the eastern suburbs have turned into a sea. Could the Yangtze River be about to breach its banks? Everyone was in disarray, and I was panicking too. My fear of water is incomparable to anyone else's. I'm terrified that the rain will flood up to my 3rd floor, trapping me like a turtle in a jar, forcing me to face my fear of water once again. After the emergency notification from the property management, I couldn't settle down. I had enough food to last for a while, but the thought of water reaching the 3rd floor really scared me. I remembered my father's advice: if there's a flood, run to the rooftop. Maybe the psychological trauma from before was too severe because I actually ran to the rooftop. Our building has 31 floors. I took the elevator to the top, glanced at the 6 apartments there. 5 out of the 6 apartments were sold, only 1 was left vacant, though it was already sealed with an iron gate that had no renovation permit attached. I tried to open it. Naturally, it was locked. Helpless, I had to return to the 3rd floor, hoping the rain would stop soon. I hardly slept that night, always half awake, with visions of being trapped in a car by water, which then morphed into being swallowed by a flood. I woke up at 7. Surprised to hear no rain. The sky was still overcast, but it wasn't raining. Relieved, I ran to open the window and could vaguely see the entire neighborhood submerged. The artificial pond was already overflowing. On the 1st floor, many homeowners were scooping water, trying to prevent their homes from flooding, and complaints were everywhere. The community chat was lively. People were sharing their post-disaster experiences, and some were even preparing to wade through the water to go shopping. Had the disaster passed, I didn't go downstairs because I was afraid of the water. I kept an eye on the local weather bureau's announcement, which stated the heavy rain had stopped, and the government was now engaged in rescue and relief operations. Everyone was advised to be cautious of post-disaster hazards and stay away from places like electric poles. I should have been reassured, but a quick internet check showed it was still raining heavily in many parts of the country, even in areas where rainfall is usually scarce. Looking at international news only made my heart sink. The capital city faces a once-in-a-century downpour, submerging vast slums. New York's subway flooded, leading to the worst fatal accident in 30 years. An Antarctic research station reported continuous hail in the Wilkes Land for 3 days. These news reports carried a strong scent of apocalypse. I frowned, looking at the sky outside, which was nothing but a blanket of white. Had the rain really stopped, or was it just taking a breath? By evening, some order had been restored in our community, and the local supermarket reopened. The rain hadn't come, but the sky remained oppressive. My fear of rain forced me to overthink. I kept thinking about that 2 million year long rainfall. After a moment, I put on rain boots and hurried to the supermarket. The supermarket was crowded, mostly with children. This indicated that people weren't consciously hoarding. They still preferred to buy fresh food from the market, believing the rain had stopped. I didn't dawdle. I started hoarding for real. Hundreds of bags of chicken wings and legs, 50 packs of sausages, 30 boxes of biscuits, 20 bags of bread, 2 crates of bottled water. Additionally, I bought flashlights, batteries, power banks, and other items in case of a power outage. The supermarket staff were stunned. I didn't mind them and kept hauling everything back to my apartment. With this, I could get by for 2 to 3 months if I was frugal. I also had a large bag of rice at home, which could last a long time if the power stayed on. Later, I went to a pharmacy and bought various medications such as Isatis root, ibuprofen, aspirin, iodine, cetirizine, and montmorillonite powder, no matter if I have a fever or diarrhea. It can be treated. However, this still doesn't give me enough sense of security. My biggest fear is flooding. The 3rd floor is too low. I've already had some thoughts and privately messaged someone in the homeowners group. He owns a unit in this building but lives out of town, only returning once every 2 or 3 years. His apartment, 3102 on the 31st floor, is usually rented out. He often posts rental notices in the group, asking for help in finding tenants. I told him directly that I had found a tenant and asked for a 200 yuan red packet for acting as the middleman. He was thrilled, offering a monthly rent of 500 yuan, with a minimum lease of 3 months, and said he would arrange for the property management to hand over the keys to me. We made the exchange, money for keys, and sure enough, someone from the property management brought me the keys. I began moving my things, going up and down repeatedly, transferring all my supplies to apartment 3102. Along the way, I encountered a few homeowners who asked what I was doing. I told them I was exchanging supplies for money with a neighbor upstairs, and they asked no more questions. Finally, by 9 o'clock in the evening, I had moved everything. I was nearly exhausted, but I still made sure to check the doors and windows to make sure they were securely locked. Now, hiding on the 31st floor with a room full of supplies, I felt completely safe. I had just relaxed when the sound of pattering rain started incessantly, like marbles furiously hitting the windows. A chill ran down my spine as I looked out the window to see the sky full of rain, stretching towards the earth like the tentacles of a demon. For, it's raining again, even more fierce torrential rain. Although I had prepared thoroughly, I still felt an inexplicable shiver. The whole neighborhood was in chaos. Homeowners who were just walking outside a moment ago hurried back to their homes, struggling like ants in the rain. The property management issued a notice immediately, urging everyone to stay indoors and secure their doors and windows. Homeowners were cursing in the group chat. It's raining again. Didn't the Meteorological Bureau say it would stop? I finally managed to get some meat, but in my rush to get home, I don't know where I lost it. The water in the garage hasn't even receded yet. And now it's flooded again. It's all over. Our community's garage was severely flooded. It had stopped raining earlier today, and the property management was working overtime to drain the water, but then the torrential rain started again. Even if it rained for just one day, the 1st floor would likely be submerged. As expected, by 2 a.m., amidst the loud noise of the rain, there were faint yet audible curses that the rain could not drown out. They were coming from the 1st floor. I could hear them all the way up on the 31st floor, showing just how many homeowners were cursing. The 1st floor was definitely flooded. The noise in the stairwell was loud. Clearly, residents from the 1st floor were running upstairs. The sounds from various floors increased, and homeowners on the 31st floor began to open their doors. I heard a neighbor urgently saying, "Hurry and go down to help. Don't let anyone drown." They were undoubtedly kind-hearted. I couldn't do that, because I'm afraid of water and didn't want to go down and deal with it. Rescue operations began in the building, with residents from higher floors volunteering to help, some assisting in saving valuable furniture, and others inviting those from lower floors into their homes to warm up. The group chat was bustling, the spirit of mutual aid stirring. Meanwhile, I kept up with news from all over the country. Currently, Instagram was exploding because it was raining in most of the cities nationwide. In cities like ours, repeated stops and starts are common. The top trending news is a prediction from experts. #nationwide torrential rains trigger century's worst flood. The capital is no better off, with a completely failed drainage system leaving half the city submerged in rainwater. These news reports send chills down my spine. Initially, our city was the top trending topic, but now it seems insignificant. What does this tell us? It means the rainfall is incredibly severe. The major economic cities across the country are at risk of flooding, and higher authorities can no longer afford to pay attention to our city. My sense of crisis is overwhelming, not just because of my fear of water, but also due to the catastrophic news from all over the country. I am reminded once again of the rain that lasted for 2 million years. The current downpours are anything but normal. Defying all logical explanations, this could well be a mass extinction event. I quickly go online to gather information, focusing on two aspects. First, what would happen if it keeps raining continuously for a month, 3 months, or even a year? Secondly, how I can save myself. After much searching, I find no detailed methods for self-rescue. It seems the only option is to seek higher ground. And if the rain continues, the consequences will be dire. In about half a month, power could be damaged, possibly resulting in outages and countless people falling ill due to damp conditions. In about a month, low-lying areas would be submerged, leading to widespread floods, landslides, and more. After 2 months, small-scale famines would begin, with people dying of starvation everywhere. By the 4th month, infectious diseases would start to spread. By the 6th month, a massive die-off of plants and animals would occur, with low-altitude areas completely submerged. By the end of a year, except for high-altitude areas and mountains, there might be no dry land visible anywhere in the world. Terrifying. I can't help but worry. If it rains for months or even a year, what will I do? What about my parents? I rush to call them, thankful that there's still a signal. My dad, worried, says, "Zoe, this weather is not normal at all. I think we need to head to the mountains." Harney Mountain is over 2,000 meters high and has caves we can hide in. My usually carefree dad is seriously considering heading to the mountains, which shows he's really scared. Has the village been flooded? I ask anxiously. It flooded the day before yesterday. A mudslide destroyed half the village, and many people died. His voice breaking into a sob. I'm frantic. Why didn't you tell me sooner? I didn't want to worry you. Things aren't great there either. I've seen the news. Many areas in your Xiaodu Port district are flooded. You should get to a high-rise building, always thinking of me, my dad. I tell him I'm already on the 31st floor, and urge him to gather the villagers and head to Harney Mountain as soon as possible. He agrees and suggests, "Zoe, you should also try to get to Harney Mountain when you can. It's the highest mountain in our city, and it won't get flooded." That idea strikes a chord with me. Of course, why didn't I think of that? If I make it to Harney Mountain and hide in a cave at an altitude of 2,000 meters, even a massive flood couldn't reach us. Plus, Harney Mountain is a scenic area with steps leading up the mountain and buildings at both the summit and mid-slope, perfect for taking refuge. But I can't leave now. Everything is flooded, and without a boat, it's impossible to get out, and since my building is over 100 meters high, it would be difficult for the rainwater to reach the 31st floor, unless it really does rain for several months or more. 6. I reassure my dad that I'm safe for now, and if there's a chance, I'll also make my way to Harney Mountain. After hanging up, I'm left feeling utterly exhausted, overwhelmed by excessive worry and fear. I felt groggy. I cooked something to eat, filled my belly, took a hot bath, and crawled into bed. Tonight was destined to be a sleepless one. The floors were noisy, and feeling unwell, I fell asleep to the clamor. The next day, a nightmare woke me up, and upon listening intently, I could hear the furious sound of rain. The rain sounded like the roaring of the heavens, accompanied by the howling wind, making the windows rattle noisily. The floor had quieted down somewhat. I guessed everyone was exhausted. Those on the lower floors had taken refuge in the homes on the higher floors and were resting. I slapped my face to wake up, walked out to the living room, and was shocked to see a layer of water already accumulating there. A corner of the ceiling was leaking, and rainwater was continuously seeping through the gaps in the windows. This is the drawback of living on a higher floor. In such torrential rain, it's hard to avoid leaks. Fortunately, the house's drainage was good, so the water couldn't gather too much. Still, it was irritating to look at. I moved the food to another spot, taking everything into the bedroom to keep it from getting damaged. As for the living room, I couldn't manage it and had no way to. Checking the chat group, it was in chaos. I'm starving. Who has food? I'll buy at a high price. All my rice got wet. Damn, my 2 million home is flooded. Thanks to the neighbors upstairs for taking us in. Panic and sorrow were spreading through the group, but people were still helping each other, waiting for rescue, seeing their camaraderie. I harbored a nagging worry. What if the torrential rain lasted a month, 2 months, 3 months? Would we still care for each other then? With scarce food, damp houses, and sickness everywhere, by then, the entire building would probably turn into a hell. I admit these thoughts are selfish and immoral, but I'm truly afraid. I fear an explosion of humanity's darker side. So, I went back to the living room, stepping through the water to double-check the door locks. Then, I pushed the shoe cabinet and a screen to the door, barricading it firmly. I needed to ensure absolute safety. With such a sturdy door isolating me from the outside, I wouldn't fear even a zombie siege if someone knocked. I'd play dead. After all, this apartment was usually unoccupied for 3 continuous days, until the power went out. No one knocked. Although many people had come to the 31st floor, they had all sought refuge in others' homes. Meanwhile, the rain intensified, beyond what a red alert could describe. The property management seemed to have disappeared, probably flooded out. After lunch, I heard wailing outside. The 2nd and 3rd floors are flooded. My home, it's terrifying. The 4th floor will soon flood too. Looking at this water level, the city's governmental departments must be inundated. My mother is going to starve. Can anyone spare some food? A sense of despair spread faster than the water. Another 3 days passed, and the rain had continued for half a month. Except for the day I stocked up, it hadn't stopped. I hid in the bedroom, daring not to go out, as the living room was completely flooded, and the drainage system was overwhelmed. The bedroom would soon be soaked too. I charged my phone with a power bank, browsing the latest news online. With rainfall nationwide, services in many areas were paralyzed, with most news coming from netizens across the country. The city is begging for help. Our whole basin is about to flood. Help in Sheep City. The Pearl River has breached its banks. I'm in the U.S., where hurricanes and tsunamis have completely devastated the West Coast. Can I seek help from the embassy? Swallowing hard. My fingers trembled slightly. This seems to be a true biological extinction event. It has become clear that the continuous heavy rains over the past half-month have led to global chaos, and this is just the beginning. Even if the rains have stopped now, the death toll is likely to be in the millions. If it doesn't stop, the number of deaths will continue to skyrocket, accompanied by the arrival of famine and the spread of disease due to the rotting of bodies. I tried to continue checking for updates, but I couldn't refresh my feed. A heavy realization hit me. The internet was completely down. Now, with the power and internet gone, everyone has become an isolated struggler. Like insects trapped on a deserted island. Suddenly, a howl came from outside. My God, what is that? A tsunami, a tsunami. The flood is coming. Run. Others saw it too and screamed in panic. They were in the corridor on the 31st floor, looking out from their position to the north. The terrain to the north is much higher and is home to large mountains and rivers. I immediately realized that it was a flash flood from the mountains in the north, causing a tsunami on land. Our city's tall buildings are about to face the terrifying impact of these mountain torrents. The flood is here. It has surged down from the elevated north, rushing into the downtown area to the south. I couldn't see the flood from inside my room, but I could hear the terrifying sound of the torrential waves, a thunderous roar accompanied by the cracking of buildings along its path, growing louder as it approached, like an ancient beast charging, sending shivers down my spine. It's over. Could our building be washed away? Even if it withstands the flood, it's likely to be severely damaged, right? The destructive power of the flood is comparable to that of an earthquake. I rushed back to my bedroom, shut the door tightly, and crawled under the bed. I only knew how to hide from earthquakes, not floods, so instinctively, I hid under the bed. This should work. If the walls are smashed by the flood, the bed could cushion me. As for other methods, I couldn't think of any. All I could do was pray that the building would hold. Outside, the howling sound drew closer, along with chaotic footsteps and shouts. Go up, the flood is too high, get to the roof, don't hide on the lower floors, run to the 20th floor and above. Hiding in your room is useless, you must go to the higher floors. Some smart people were rushing upstairs, which also indirectly indicated that the flood was extremely high. The flood from the north might be comparable to a devastating giant tsunami, capable of inundating everything in its path, turning the entire downtown area of a city into a vast ocean. By then, it wouldn't just be the 5th floor of our building that was submerged. Those remaining on the lower floors were undoubtedly courting death. I clenched my teeth, my lips trembling, hands tightly gripping the foot of the bed, my body breaking out in cold sweat. The painful memories from 3 years ago seemed to surge back as well. The violent rainy night, the icy lake water, the shattered glass. I even started to hallucinate. My mind went blank. Suddenly, with a thunderous crash, it felt as if a huge hammer had struck my back, sliding my body forward, and my head hit the wall. Dizzy, a multitude of crashing sounds assaulted my senses. The building had become like a rock by the seaside, incessantly battered by huge waves carrying muddy yellow water. Debris from destroyed structures and floating bodies. The flood had arrived. Screams of terror resonated from outside. Many residents who were still in the corridors were swept away by the flood, their fates unknown. Their reactions had been too slow. Perhaps they had been ascending from the lower floors using the stairs, and they simply didn't have the time to take shelter in someone else's home. Amidst countless screams, the building shook violently. I could hear the creaking of walls. As plaster dust fell and numerous cracks appeared in the living room, it seemed as if the ceiling was about to burst. Clutching the corner of the wall, enveloped in sheer terror, I smelled the foul stench of the silt. The flood had even reached the 31st floor. My apartment was filled with yellowish floodwater, mixed with various rotten smells. I thought to myself, this was the end. The flood had reached as high as the 31st floor. Surely, I would be submerged. However, fate wasn't so cruel to me. Aside from successive waves that kept coming in, the overwhelming deluge didn't sweep through. In other words, the floodwaters could not drown the 31st floor. They might have engulfed up to the 20th floor, merely brushing against the 31st. I breathed a sigh of relief, but before I could feel at ease, a loud bang shook the entire building, causing it to sway, and I felt my body sliding to the right. The whole building was tilting. The building was leaning to the right, undoubtedly. It must have been caused by the floodwaters impacting some structural support or breaking a massive hole on the right side of the building. Whatever the case, the tilt of the building was enough to signify it was no longer safe. Hiding on the 31st floor was futile, as the flood would eventually bring down the building. The screams continued, and I heard a neighbor's cries for help. Help, the building is going to collapse. Help. The cries and sobs were heart-wrenching. I was completely frozen in place, already fearful of water, and now faced with both the flood and the potential collapse of the building. I was utterly terrified. My only option was to crouch under the bed like an ostrich, but then, a muffled sound came from the bedroom ceiling, like the cracking of steel and concrete. The tilt of the building must have been compressing the ceiling. My luck was terrible. The ceiling overhead was about to crack. In the next instant, with a snap, pieces of rubble fell down, the sound of breaking becoming more frequent. In this life or death moment, I finally mustered a bit of courage. I had to get out of here. I couldn't take the risk. If the entire ceiling came crashing down, I could be trapped or even killed on the spot. I bit down on my wrist and frantically ran outside. All my belongings were in the bedroom, but at that moment, I could only grab 2 suitcase-sized bags and crawl out. Just as I got out, the bedroom ceiling collapsed, leaving a gaping hole through which rain poured in. Flattening the bed, shaken, I crawled towards the living room, only to find that a corner of its ceiling had also broken open, rain swirling in, mixed with the yellow floodwater, turning the living room into a dump. The only silver lining was that the metal door hadn't been busted open. Water could only squeeze through the cracks of the door. And since the floodwater hadn't reached the 31st floor, I was much safer than those on lower floors. Using all my strength, I managed to crawl to the kitchen doorway, where I sat leaning against the wall. I was completely soaked through, my vision was blurred, and a foul stench filled my nostrils. The 2 suitcases I clung to were still intact, the only supplies I managed to save. One contained basic food and water, the other some medicines. I didn't choose them specifically, they were just the only things I could take. Everything else was left behind. Crack, a loud bursting noise from somewhere pierced through the sound of the flood, and the building tilted further, the ceiling cracks worsening. What to do? There was no way out. Like a dying man, I dragged my suitcases, watching for falling debris from the ceiling. Whenever stones fell, I crawled to another spot. After shifting 3 times, half of the living room ceiling had completely broken open. Above was a bleak, rain-soaked sky, like the gaping maw of a demon. I couldn't bear to look at the sky. It made it hard to breathe. I turned my gaze away, only to see the world outside the balcony. What a horrific sight. A roaring, reddish-yellow flood swept past, carrying trees, buildings, and corpses southward. Everything along its path was destroyed. I saw the building opposite collapse. It was the oldest in our complex. Unable to withstand the flood, our building was probably submerged up to the 20th floor or higher. Finally, I saw the flood, that reddish-yellow demon, harvesting everything in a city, claiming countless lives. This desperate scene shattered my spirit, magnifying the nightmare I had 3 years ago. I could breathe, yet I felt suffocated. Death crossed my mind. How insignificant are humans in the face of natural disasters? I was sure I wouldn't survive. I couldn't overcome the nightmare from 3 years ago, nor escape this leaning building. I hoped my parents would survive. They had gone up to Harney Mountain, which couldn't possibly be flooded. With that thought, I felt a slight comfort. I took a deep breath and mustered the courage to look beyond the ceiling at the sky. Cruel fate, are you determined to see me dead? Something seemed off. The sky lacked something. The torrential rain that should be my greatest fear. I looked closely. No rain. The hazy whiteness had stilled. The downpour had actually stopped. I couldn't believe it. Just moments ago, it was pouring, and now it had stopped. I rubbed my eyes and looked again. No rain indeed. It had truly stopped. The rain has stopped. The rain has stopped. Joyous shouts came from next door, spreading throughout the building. Every floor echoed with the voices of survivors. The rain had really stopped. Even with the overwhelming flood, the cessation of rain was a miracle. I couldn't help but feel elated. I had thought myself doomed, yet there was hope. I tried standing and found that, although the building was tilted, it was mostly stable. With the most violent impact of the flood past, the building had endured. Double blessings. I leaned on the wall and walked to the balcony to look at the sky again. Truly, there was no rain. Below the 20th floor, the flood still rushed past, but it seemed much calmer. It's all right now, we're still alive. Neighbors shouted from their balconies, encouraging each other. Since the 31st floor was the highest, the sense of relief was palpable. So, each apartment is bustling with residents from the lower floors. Our 31st floor is extraordinarily lively. I thought to myself, there are so many people around. Suddenly, I was overwhelmed by an inexplicable feeling. Humans truly are social animals. After the disaster, hearing my neighbors' shouts, I felt a trace of warmth. My desire to survive intensified. I knew I had to make it to Harney Mountain. It was definitely not safe now, as the rain had stopped temporarily before, which was merely a brief respite. As long as the sky remains overcast, I refuse to believe the rain has truly stopped. I must leave this place. Harney Mountain is my destination. I've been thinking about it for a while but had no means to get there. No. With the floodwaters sky high, it seems even less possible, however. If the torrential rain lets up, it might alleviate the flooding somewhat. With a boat, I could navigate the floodwaters southeastward to Harney Mountain. If I can reach Harney Mountain before the rain returns, I will survive. With my mind made up, my will to live is stronger than ever. I also realize that I can't keep hiding alone. Hiding would only lead to a certain death. No, I must rely on the strength of the community. I look towards the southeast, where everything is blurred by the floodwaters that have swallowed everything, but that's where my parents are, and the mountains over 2,000 meters high. Who has fever medicine? My child has had a high fever for 2 days, and it's getting worse. A cry suddenly came from outside the door, as people went door to door begging for medicine. The 31st floor became noisy as many people went out to see what was happening. I'm a doctor. I have medicine at home, but my apartment on the 15th floor is submerged. I've swallowed a lot of floodwater and my stomach hurts terribly. Does anyone have painkillers? I still have some rice. Let's nibble on it. They gathered together, still thinking of helping each other. Though their resources were limited, more people from below came up, asking for food and medicine. A rotting smell pervaded the building, possibly a precursor to an outbreak of infectious diseases. The flood brought too many bacteria, and too many people have died in the building, with many corpses floating in the apartments below the 20th floor. I walked to the door, listening to everyone's voices, feeling deeply moved. In the face of such a disaster, the power of one individual is so insignificant. When the rain comes again, all pretenses of human decency will fade. Everyone will die. We must unite to save ourselves. I have medicine, I said as I opened the door, and the crowd turned to me in surprise. There's someone in this apartment. Without responding, I opened my suitcase filled with medicines, ibuprofen, Baoji pills, Yunnan Bayao, among others. Thanks to proper storage, they were still usable. Thank you so much. Thank you. A woman holding her child cried with joy, her hands trembling. A tall man spoke up. Now that we have medicine, I can give the child ibuprofen. I looked at him. He was drenched and disheveled but had a handsome face and gave me a smile. I'm Egbert, a doctor from the People's Hospital. Nice to meet you. I nodded in greeting, saying my name was Zoe. Suddenly, an old man handed me a dirty bag of bread. Here, young lady, have some bread. Your medicine came just in time. Here, let me clean your wound with some alcohol, and I'll give you an apple. A burly man handed me a rotten apple. I didn't know whether to laugh or cry, but I wasn't repelled by the gesture. In times like these, whether selfish or noble, the goal is simply to stay alive. We must survive. I then spoke up. We need to leave this place. The torrential rain is bound to continue, and we can't gamble on it stopping. Everyone's expression changed, and I could tell that many had come to the same conclusion. The rain was likely to continue, but no one wanted to voice it. Egbert had given some children fever medicine and said in a serious tone, "We indeed can't take that risk. Zoe, what do you suggest? Let's find a boat and head to Harney Mountain in the southeastern suburbs. If we take advantage of the break in the storm and the easing floods, we might have a chance to make it there." I shared my thoughts. People exchanged glances, energized by the idea, though some were hesitant. It's over 20 kilometers away, and there are so many obstacles along the way. Although the flood has eased a bit, it's not like it's a river channel. Besides, what if it starts pouring again halfway through? These concerns were understandable, and I had considered them too. But if we don't leave, staying here would be a certain death. The building is already leaning. If it rains heavily again and the flood rises sharply, the building will definitely collapse. Egbert spoke up. Moreover, we're out of food. Even if we could keep hiding in the building, we would eventually starve to death. It's better to take a chance. Egbert had made the stakes clear, and he was of the same mind as me. Everyone pondered this. At that moment, a pair of twin brothers stepped forward. "We're competitive rowers. As long as we have a boat, we can steer it." The group was overjoyed and immediately gained confidence. Now, the only problem was finding a boat. There's a boatyard upstream on the Jialing River, and many fishing boats too. The flood came from that direction, so some boats might have been washed down. "Let's go to the north side of the building to see if we can find one," a man with glasses suggested. "Old Mao works at the boatyard, and if he says so, there must be boats." Someone knew Old Mao and thought it made sense. Several men went to check by the window. They peered out through the broken glass, looking towards the north side. Soon after, someone joyfully exclaimed, "There really is a boat, lying over there, maybe on the 21st floor." I went to look and saw the damaged boat. It was a fishing boat, no more than 10 meters long, battered but not sunken, indicating that its main structure was still relatively stable. "One boat isn't enough. Let's see if any more have been washed down." Egbert took charge, waving his hand. "Women and children stay on the 31st floor. Young men, follow me downstairs. We need to secure and repair the boat." Agreed. About a dozen men responded and followed Egbert downstairs. We stayed on the 31st floor waiting. I went back to my room to gather any remaining edible food, along with the supplies in my other suitcase, to provide a hearty meal for everyone. Everyone hurried to eat. The old man who gave me bread reminded us, "Don't finish it all. Leave more for the young guys. They are exhausted from fixing the boat." Everyone nodded, agreeing to save some for Egbert and the others. We continued to wait. From the 21st floor, we could hear the men shouting. After all, securing a boat in a flood was no easy task. Many of the high-rise residents showed up, and after hearing about our plans, some joined the team while others went back into hiding. Clearly, not everyone was brave enough to head to Harney Mountain, and with the rain having stopped, many were under the mistaken impression that it was safe. I kept an eye on the sky, which, apart from being overcast, hadn't changed at all. I remembered the last time the rain stopped midway. It had lasted for a day. How long would it stop this time? As night fell, the temperature dropped sharply, and everyone became drowsy. Some of the elderly curled up in corners, nearly unconscious. Clutching my suitcase, I groped my way to the 21st floor. It was pitch dark, but there were many people around. Egbert and his group were on the balcony of apartment 2105, securing the fishing boat outside with ropes. The fishing boat was rusty and its engine had long been broken, but fortunately, it wasn't a small wooden boat, or it would have fallen apart by now. I brought food over, and the men devoured it instantly. Egbert revived a bit after eating half a pack of jerky. "We must set off after dawn. I'm afraid the storm might return," I said, and the shadows in the darkness immediately became anxious. Egbert rasped, "Setting off in the morning is fine, but one boat can't carry many. We haven't been able to find a second one." There were already more than 30 survivors just from the 31st floor. Not to mention the whole building. Certainly, more than 30 people would be willing to go to Harney Mountain, and a powerless fishing boat, navigating through the floodwaters, would be dangerous even with just 10 people. I frowned in thought, but Egbert had a suggestion. "Let's send a group in the morning. Zoe, you take the women, children, and elderly, with Abu steering. About 15 people should be manageable, if it was women, children, and the elderly." 15 people were indeed feasible. Abu was one of the twins, a rowing athlete. Old Mouse spoke up. "Today, we saw at least 5 boats wash away. It's a pity they were too far to retrieve. If another one comes close enough, we can send another group." Right. The later boats should be larger, as the small ones would have capsized early on. They had everything planned. I would leave first with their families, letting only Abu, a strong man, help me steer. I had no objections, only cautioning Egbert to be careful. He wiped his face, smeared with dirty water, and gave me a radiant smile. "I'm a doctor, I'll be fine." The difficult night began. I felt uneasy, constantly watching the sky, fearing a sudden downpour. Fortunately, when dawn came, the storm did not return. In fact, there was a streak of light in the east, piercing through the dismal overcast. The sun. Everyone cheered and jumped for joy. Though the sun wasn't clearly visible, that was indeed sunlight. The rain really stopped. "The sun is out." Everyone was ecstatic, some even moved to tears. Egbert stared for a moment and then asked me, "Zoe, it looks like it might not rain, right?" I shook my head. "I don't know, but I feel like it might still rain. The sun can't break through the clouds, and the sky looks as if it's wrapped in a film. It's all too unusual. Seeing a glimmer of light is cause for joy, but we mustn't be careless, since the sunlight couldn't reach us." I suspected that the earth was enveloped in clouds, making that bit of sun insignificant. Egbert thought about it and it made sense to him. He waved his hand and said, "Stick to the original plan. This morning, we start by sending a group to Mount Harney. Those who were notified last night head down to the 21st floor." Egbert had strong leadership skills and had arranged everything, but many were reluctant to take the risk. The sun is out, it can't possibly rain now, that boat is too rickety. How can we go to Mount Harney? Yeah, let's wait for the floodwaters to recede. No need to take risks. I'm not going. I'd rather stay here and chew on raw rice. Surprisingly, the majority refused to leave. It was a natural response. After all, the sun symbolizes hope. With hope, who would want to go on a potentially fatal journey? Some of the men who had repaired the boat yesterday were now wavering, and there was a lot of discussion. I'm going. Whoever wants to join me, come along, I said straightforwardly, ready to take those willing to go. People looked at each other, deeply conflicted. I'll go to Mount Harney with you. Egbert supported me, scanning the crowd. Time is of the essence. Who else is willing to go? I'll go too, said the woman whose child had a fever yesterday, now holding her awake daughter. As a geographer, I must say, I think the rain will come again. The old man who gave me bread came forward, wanting to join me. In the end, a total of 13 people agreed to go to Mount Harney, including the twin rowers. I felt the boat was just enough for us. I'm no hero and didn't try to persuade anyone else to come along. I left the food behind and set off with Egbert and the others. 2105 household. The balcony escape window wide open, we climbed out one by one, jumping onto the fishing boat. Inside the house, people saw us off with mixed emotions, some complex, some worried, and others hesitant. Me, Egbert, the twin rowers, and the rest of us, 13 people in total, boarded the fishing boat. The boat was equipped with wooden planks for rowing, nylon ropes for stability, and some tools for boat repair. The twins had already grabbed 2 large planks to use as oars. Egbert tied ropes around various parts of the boat, reminding us, everyone, hold on to the ropes, don't fall into the water. The floodwaters under the boat continued to surge, not as terrifying as yesterday, but still not to be underestimated. Everyone nodded. As the person most afraid of water, I huddled at the stern of the boat, clutching the ropes, my whole body numb. I dared not look at the floodwaters below, feeling nauseous, actually, when I climbed out the window onto the boat. I was quite brave, supported by a surge of courage inside. Once I sat down, feeling the sway of the fishing boat and the surge of the floodwaters, the nightmare from 3 years ago started to haunt me. I was terrified of falling in, afraid of being swallowed by the waters. What's wrong? Egbert bent down to check on me. I forced a smile and said, I'm a bit seasick, let's get going. Without further ado, Egbert waved goodbye to the others, and the group of 13 set off. The twins braced the boat against the building walls with their paddles, inching towards the right. As soon as the fishing boat was no longer obstructed by the buildings, its speed increased sharply and it burst forth. Everyone screamed, thankfully having already secured themselves with ropes, otherwise a few of us might have fallen overboard. I almost threw up, quickly closing my eyes and taking deep breaths. Ahead lay an endless expanse of floodwaters, the entire city submerged. With only a few solitary high-rises standing in the water, there were people on the high-rises, waving at us for help, but what could we do? The twin brothers were steering, a tough job, but their experience ensured they didn't capsize the boat. There's a river to the southeast. Once we get into the river, we can make our way to Mount Harney smoothly. Abu looked ahead. Everyone was tense yet hopeful. Those who had the strength helped paddle and steer the boat, while those without strength held tight to the ropes and helped the twins watch for obstacles. Egbert, beside me, signaled for me to relax, slightly worried about my state. Unfortunately, the fishing boat suddenly tilted after hitting something, and a huge wave splashed over me. I vomited immediately, and Egbert quickly grabbed my arm, fearing I might fall overboard. Sit tight, there are too many buildings in the city area. The fishing boat can't stay steady, Abu shouted loudly, as he predicted. We bumped along, nearly capsizing several times, but thankfully the fishing boat was sturdy enough to avoid disaster. The 20-kilometer journey was drawing closer. Finally, after passing through a torrent in the southeastern outskirts, we entered the river. Of course, the river was unrecognizable, swallowed by the flood and blended into a reddish-yellow hue. Good, it's much safer now. I estimate we'll reach Mount Harney in half an hour, Abu exclaimed joyously, nearly exhausted. It took us nearly 2 hours to get here, just half an hour more to succeed. Suddenly, a thunderclap roared in the sky, lightning streaked across, and the once foggy sky turned ominously dark. I felt a sudden chill, and cold sweat ran down my spine. Egbert and the others also turned pale, and everyone urged in fear, hurry, hurry, it's going to rain again, and it was going to rain again. My worst fear was coming true, with thunder rolling. A torrential downpour was sure to engulf the land. And we still had half an hour to go. Speed up, the river is relatively calm, everyone push hard, the twins shouted, standing at the bow paddling vigorously, using the power of the floodwaters to propel us forward. Everyone sprang into action, paddling with planks, just like dragon boating. I was grateful for having 2 rowers here, otherwise, we ordinary people couldn't have moved the fishing boat at all. Boom. An even louder thunderclap exploded, in just an instant. A torrential downpour hit. It descended not gradually but all at once, blanketing the entire city of A, striking the entire region in a flash. The rain was so heavy that we could hardly open our eyes, and our movement was severely hindered. Egbert, rowing fiercely, encouraged us, "Don't be afraid, keep going, the flood has not arrived yet, hurry." The flood he referred to as the potential second wave of flash floods, more terrifying than the water beneath our boat. I rowed vigorously at the stern, my eyes wide open, watching the north. The gray sky was underpinned by a torrent of red-yellow floodwater. Amid endless rain, visibility was poor, but 10 minutes later, I heard a terrifying roar from the north. The floodwaters were turning. They were coming. Quickly, I shouted, my arms nearly breaking. Everyone rowed frantically. Abu up front shouted, "We're close to Harney Mountain, just hold on for another 15 minutes. His words undoubtedly inspired a renewed burst of energy in us. 3 minutes later, the roaring sound of the flood approached. Our fishing boat began to rock violently, the vibrations of the water reaching us, making the boat unstable. After another 3 minutes, I saw a white mist enveloping a yellow dragon. What a terrifying sight it was. The entire horizon was yellow, a massive wave rushing down from the north of a city, much higher than any before. This flood was bound to devour the 31-story buildings. It was unlikely anyone in the city would survive. And if the flood caught up to us, we would be crushed to bits in an instant. My God, it's over. The others saw the flood too and were paralyzed by fear, unable to row any further. Egbert, pale-faced, yelled, "Pull yourselves together, fast." A few kept rowing, the twin brothers exerting all their strength without looking up. The trauma of a nightmare from 3 years ago resurfaced, looming before me. I was going to be swallowed by the flood. "Zoe, everyone came out here with you. Get a grip," Egbert shouted, tossing a plank to me. I shivered, bit my tongue hard, tasting blood in my mouth. I had to keep moving, or I would perish in the flood. "Row, row. The flood is still 10 minutes away." Trust me, I lied. The flood was no more than 5 minutes away. We were doomed, but it was in this dire situation that we had to fight hard. I recalled escaping from the icy lake, thinking I was doomed then too, yet I survived. I should believe in turning the tide, not being trapped in a nightmare. Row, everyone fought again, believing in my words. Behind us, the thunderous roar of the flood drew closer, pushing across the horizon, the towering waves roaring and smashing into buildings. The flood was nearing, and our boat was slowing down due to the intense vibrations of the water. Forget about 5 minutes, even 10 more minutes seemed unlikely to offer escape. The twin brothers looked back at me, their faces filled with despair, understanding the end was near. But suddenly, Egbert shouted, "A boat, a big boat." Ahead, against all odds, was a large fishing boat moving upstream. The boat, 30 meters in length, cut through the waves with its propellers churning the floodwaters into froth. I was overwhelmed with joy. Was this an illusion? In such circumstances, a fishing boat was actually making its way upstream. "Zoe, is that you?" At the bow, an old man clung to the iron chains and yelled toward us. His figure was blurred, obscured by the torrential rain. I shivered all over. "Dad, Dad, Dad." I burst into tears and ran towards the bow. On the large fishing boat, more than 10 men shouted, "Quick, use the net to pull them up. Turn the boat around quickly, clearly." They were terrified by the giant wave they saw approaching. A huge fishing net was thrown over us, enveloping everyone. "Hold on to the net." Egbert was also thrilled, and a group of people clung to the net as the strong men hauled us aboard. The boat turned around and sped downstream at full power. All I could hear were the sounds of wind and rain, as if I was passing through the gates of hell. My dad came over and hugged me, crying his heart out. I cried too, overwhelmed with emotion. But now was not the time for reminiscing. A deckhand shouted, "Get ready, we're approaching Wunyang Mountain's cableway soon. Everyone jump onto the lift. People above will pull us up." As he spoke, Wunyang Mountain was already close at hand. It stood over 2,000 meters tall, its base submerged in the floodwaters, possibly by several tens of meters. The cableway at mid-mountain had been converted into a manually operated system, and a large crowd on the mid-mountain clearing was shouting down at us. A lift, a wooden platform secured with chains capable of carrying more than 10 people at a time, was lowered. The fishing boat crashed hurriedly against the mountainside, and the deckhands leaped onto the lift. My dad, holding me, also jumped on, shouting, "Don't scramble, or it might tip over. The rest will go in the second batch." The lift quickly ascended, and the people at mid-mountain pulled us up with force. I looked northward. The terrifying giant wave was incredibly close, possibly less than 1,000 meters away. I could smell the foul mist, and my face stung sharply. "Quick, lower it." We jumped onto the mid-mountain, and the lift went down again. The second batch of people all made it onto the lift, shouting urgently to pull. The roar of the floodwaters was deafening, the scent of death filling our mouths. I helped pull the chain. Seeing Egbert on the lift, holding children and women, pull. The entire mid-mountain crowd pulled together, dozens of people hauling the lift up. Boom, the majestic mountain trembled as the floodwaters crashed against it. The fishing boat was instantly wrecked, countless steps destroyed, and an area of over 100 meters was submerged. I was gasping for breath, exchanging glances with Egbert, who wiped off his sweat, looked back at the flood below, then at me, and laughed. Scared me to death. Holy moly, I laughed too and gave him a punch. After the ordeal, we finally reached the top of Wunyang Mountain. The middle of the mountain stands a kilometer high, and currently, the flood has only submerged 100 meters, so we are very safe. However, the torrential rain is severe, leaving the entire mountain soaked, causing many people on the mountain to fall ill and shiver in the caves. My dad led us into a makeshift cave, which was also damp. But there was a fire that warmed us up. I saw my mom, who hugged me and cried non-stop, making me tear up again. Don't cry anymore, we are absolutely safe now. There's plenty of food on the mountain, it's just that we're short on medicine, so try not to get wet and sick. My dad advised us. There are many survivors on the mountain, a few hundred, mostly from nearby villages, who brought a lot of food. Unfortunately, not much medicine. Falling ill is still troublesome. Egbert expressed his gratitude. Thank you, Uncle. It's a pity about your boat, with such a huge flood. I wouldn't dare go out again. I was determined to save my daughter when I ventured into the city, my dad said, scratching his head and teasingly looking at me. Zoe, your boyfriend is quite handsome. I was immediately embarrassed. What boyfriend? Egbert looked at me and just laughed, without saying a word. Afterward, we settled down. As long as we didn't fall ill, Mount Wunyang was very safe. But the situation outside was getting worse. This time, the rain continued for a month, and Mount Wunyang was already submerged by several hundred meters, while the entire city disappeared. Standing at the entrance of the cave, I looked into the distance and saw nothing but an endless expanse of water. The flood kept washing away, carrying corpses into the distance. It was almost like hell on earth. Later, the rain stopped for 3 days, but that was pointless for us. We couldn't go out to find any supplies because everything was flooded. We could only take advantage of the break in the rain to clean up our living space, bury those who had died from illness, or redistribute some food. There really was a lot of food. Bags of rice were stacked in the driest cave, along with floors covered in corn and potatoes, and even densely hung cured meats. I couldn't help but admire those villagers. They were amazing, probably having moved the supplies from entire villages up the mountain. 3 months later, the vegetation on the mountain had died off, and halfway up the mountain had become the sea. But then the rain stopped, this time for a week. Egbert and I thought the disaster was over, but a week later, it started to rain again. 6 months later, the rain hadn't stopped but had lessened significantly. The sky was much clearer. I was thrilled and had a bold idea. The rain has lessened, maybe the weather is really going to change. I wasn't expecting the rain to stop, because that's just a brief respite. I was hoping for it to decrease, a variable we hadn't seen before. Egbert, pensive, ran out to collect rainwater and quickly got drenched, but compared to before, the rain had indeed lessened a lot. 8 months in, the sky was left with only a drizzle. It was like the plum rains of March, and occasionally we could see the sun during the day. As for the mountain, after being submerged up to its middle, the floodwaters didn't seem to rise much further. My dad and the others specifically went to check halfway up the mountain and came back overjoyed. It looks like the floodwaters are starting to recede. It's a bit shallower than yesterday. Even a slight decrease is an exciting hope. We were all overjoyed. Afterward, the floodwaters noticeably began to recede, and the rain gradually lessened. By the 10th month, it rained for only 2 or 3 hours a day, and the floodwaters had receded by at least 300 meters. We ran up to the mountaintop to look at a city, seeing some rooftops that were mostly decayed, but now exposed to daylight once again. All of us who had escaped from a city hugged each other and wept. 2 months later, the rain completely stopped, and the sunlight shone through the mist, illuminating the summit of Wunyang Mountain and us as well. The survivors shouted and cried out as they welcomed the sunlight, many sobbing uncontrollably. Egbert and I looked at each other, our eyes both red. He hugged me, offering silent comfort. Several days later, when most of the buildings in a city emerged from the water, we saw several small black dots in the distance. As they approached, we realized they were military helicopters. Everyone waved and shouted frantically, excited like children under the rising sun. I laughed and cried at the same time, looking at the woman holding her daughter, the physicist with a cane, Amo with his glasses, and the twin brothers holding hands and jumping, thinking to myself how wonderful this was. Egbert was looking at me, and I asked him what he was looking at. He sighed. It's really wonderful, this silly man, but indeed, it really is wonderful.